talked about everything on this podcast. The podcast has no topics. It's about neat conversations with neat people. And I feel like you fit multiples of those neat boxes. Obviously, as a lot of people know, my background coming from brewing, at least my quote unquote famous background, that's how I got into doing my like whole social media stuff. Hobbies in general tie into the homebrewing side for me. And I've made lots of videos talking about how if you don't find the right person to get information from or help, then you've got the wrong person. So today I brought the person that kind of got me a big start in my home brewing. I had a lot of self-doubt. I bought a lot of equipment, and then I didn't know how to use any of it. And so this
you just sort of worked through it.
Yeah. And then, so then I had a friend that was like, well, you need to go to a craft brew shop and ask them questions. And I was like, oh, salesmen aren't going to want you to do that. And that's when I found out that, well, if you go one that talks to you like a salesman, you're not in the right spot because I can't, and honestly, I feel terrible because I've called him for 100 questions and I have a lot of equipment. So I don't usually need to buy anything. I just need information. But if I stopped calling him, he would be upset. He'd be like, hey, what? I haven't talked to you in a while. What you been brewing? What you been doing? What's going on? So
yeah, well, there's a sort of a selfish interest in that because I do sell supplies for brewing.
Well, sure.
And so the more people that are brewing successfully, in this area, but also in the greater community, and the more people that know about what I'm doing, than and what my whole family's doing, because it's not just me; it's a family business. The more people that get into that and find success, the more times they go back to us and ask for supplies and whatnot.
And if I ever do need something, I come see you for it.
Thank you, Ben.
I mean, like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone down there and he's actually got like these big bins, and I'll go in and I'll be like, yeah, I've got this recipe, but the George Washington, which was my very first beer that I tried to take on because I was scared. I got into doing meads because I thought this is a little bit easier. And I was scared to do a beer because there's so many more steps, so many more chances I could get it wrong. That's what I looked at.
There are some things you got to pay attention to.
And so I went down there and I was like, hey, I'm going to make this beer. And I've got this page out of George Washington's diary in his handwriting from Mount Vernon. And I kind of extrapolated some things. Like I was thinking about using this yeast, or I was thinking about using this grain, because obviously it's not like he documented all of that.
Yeah.
And he came over. He's like, all right, yeah. I'm going to like push the glasses up and got down to work on it with me. And like he gave me some great advice too, because he was like, hey, well, we could use that hop, but I would use this one because this is probably closer to what he would have. I'm like, sweet. And we put a recipe together.
Beer.
It was good. It was so good. We brewed it on the Downtown Festival here in Hillsborough, which is in June. And we kegged it 30 days later, and we tapped the keg on July 4th. So on America's birthday, we had George Washington's beer.
That's awesome,
you floated
man.
the keg win.
3 days later.
It was good.
And honestly, that was only because people were calling and I was like gone to work, and they were like, hey, I want to come by and fill my growler. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not home. But no, seriously, like I cannot say that I've been successful without people like him to give me. It's not even pointers. It's not even tips. It's confidence. Because when I say I'm trying something weird, the only thing he's ever come back with is, oh, that's not weird. He's like, I've done so weirder than that.
Honestly, it's sort of what we do is excelling in weird.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of people that have come into the shop and they've asked for all sorts of crazy ideas. We had one person wanted to make hop water. And so we literally had to pause. And I think I ended up sending him to a store to pick up a couple of things that I didn't have at grocery. And by the time he came back, it was like, that was what it was. I had him get club soda because I wanted him to have the tools, and know how to put it all together at home.
Right.
And I knew that he wouldn't have the carbonators that I had at the store. So it was just as simple as, well, okay, let me show you what you can easily put your hands on real quick. And it was like, go get 2 bottles of club soda, the 2 liters.
Yeah.
And while he was gone, we took several different types of hops, put them in our little hop bags, went to our tea maker, and literally made hop tea, and then worked with the intensity on it.
So you got where he was looking for.
Right. And then when he came back, it was like, let's throw that over ice. Let's throw the hop tea in there, chill it a little, mixed it, and it was actually very good. So, and
I mean, that's some mad scientist stuff.
So
yeah,
hop water, it's just like it sounds then. It's just,
it is. Yeah. It's just as simple as selecting the right hop. There are, down at the shop,
Oh my God,
5 different types of hops.
You have like 2 refrigerators full.
We do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of it.
Yeah.
We really have no idea where people are going to, where the requests
I will say
come from.
if you, for those people who have never homebrewed, it is really weird when you're buying hops because it has a very pungent aroma.
Yeah.
And when you buy it, it usually comes in little Mylar bags, and it's all by the ounce, and it always says on there some weird name, usually something in German or something, whatever. And then by the gram or by the ounce, and the whole way home, you're just like, God, I hope I don't get pulled over right now because no one's going to believe that this is beer ingredients in the back of my car.
That's not the worst of it. Corn sugar is probably the worst of it.
Oh, right.
I put it in a little Ziploc baggie, and it just straight out looks like cocaine. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that's why you pack it, make it in the bricks, and sell it by the brick.
No, absolutely. It's that is vacuum packed bricks of corn sugar. Absolutely.
And then I don't do a lot of extract brewing, but even that, it's just yellow tinted powder that comes in a vacuum sealed bag. And of course, whenever you go do anything like brewing related, then you've got all of the the laboratory glass because you've got beakers and you've got everything. Yeah. So if anybody pulls you over, you just hope that the cop is a home brewer.
The 2-liter EM flask.
Yeah. You've got like stainless steel and rubber gloves, and you've got,
It looks just like you cook meth.
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm convinced that when I open my garage door and I brewed out here for the first time, my neighbors, I can't believe they didn't call the cops on me because I had like all of the stuff.
I can't help people on all those illegal stuff.
No.
I really can't. So
I would think
they're on their own on the amateur pharmacies.
I would think in the area in Waco that you would still probably get some people coming in there looking for things.
I'm absolutely sure the neighborhood that I'm in is probably a good choice to start. So anyway, but yeah, it's the low rents, but the rent was very, very agreeable.
Well, it's a perfect spot, and the building is perfect. You go in, and it's small. It's a family-owned place. Okay,
it's a little chaotic.
If you're looking for the Amazon of home brewing. You're not going to, you'll find what you want, but you don't get any information with it.
So what is the name of this place?
It's Craft Brewing Shop.
Okay.
It's literally what you want to do. If you want to do craft brewing,
because you do
we're the shop for it.
Coffees, teas, sodas, beer, wine, mead. What am I forgetting?
Kombucha,
nice.
hop water.
and all of it, and it's all of the little things that go with it, because like he's convinced me to get rid of my kegerator system, which is back here behind me, because it's a pain in the butt. It's large, it's cumbersome. I don't have the back for it anymore. And so me walking in one day and he goes, oh, I got these cool little keg bottle things. They basically look like big 2-liter bottles of soda, but they're big.
I'd love to give a shout out to all
Please.
Australians.
They do.
General. I mean,
that's where it comes from.
They gift the world every year with some really great, mind-blowing,
and they're just far enough away that we don't hear about it till it's already a thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Now,
Kegland.
who?
Kegland.
Kegland.
They're out of
Okay.
Australia, and they are just probably the most creative manufacturer of brewing equipment that we have going right now. So.
And they are brewers. I don't know how else to put that. Like, because I didn't think that kegging was a problem. Because I just took it for granted as it's like, oh, I just need to buy this, or I just need this, or because every time you turn around, you don't know what I'm talking about, but we have these little corny kegs, which I don't have anymore. And they used to be for soda.
Yeah, and they're 5-gallon.
They're perfect.
Syrups.
I mean, they work good.
But they are also anywhere from 40 to 80 pounds once you load them up, depending upon what you've got in it. I mean, I actually use them for our soda system.
Yep.
So I have them with the traditional
syrup and everything
in it, and it's freaking 80 pounds to lift it up, and
it's like 9 O-rings.
Yeah,
and little springs.
But you can tear it apart.
You can, that's true.
And you can sterilize it.
Yep.
It's one of the few fermenters.
Because it's all stainless steel.
Yeah, absolutely. You just throw boiling water in it, shake it till you literally can't hold it. And if you can't hold it, neither can the bacteria.
Yeah, which is awesome. And he has a whole service for it.
Yeah.
You take it down, you be like, hey, I don't know what's wrong with this one. I've got a leak.
Yeah, we'll rebuild it for people.
Rebuilds the whole thing, replaces the little, because again, If you want to go on Amazon and find the part, great. Okay. But you know what you don't want to deal with? Buying the wrong part and then the wrong O-ring and everything else. That's
luck
why I
getting-
like a shop.
And then figuring out how to do it.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is good luck finding the right O-ring because there's like 12 different manufacturers of these old kegs.
Yes.
And they have different attachments because Coke had one and Dr. Pepper had one. And like the little, so it's a nightmare. I didn't know about any of this stuff. I walked in. He's like, oh, yeah, here, I got an adapter for this. I already made it up. I was like, oh, well, who makes this? We do.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. He's like, yeah. No, everybody comes in looking for this. So we just decided we would just start making it.
But that,
you know?
that comes from experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You know, it was funny. I like the way my dad says it. After I got my, I got a master's degree, and
Congratulations.
while I was doing that,
That's a big deal.
10 years ago. Hey, I got to be called associate professor in between then and now.
Ooh.
So a different life, actually. So
Well, you're the professor of beer in my mind. So
I was thinking of getting a name tag, Professor of Brew. So anyway, I got off on a
sorry. You got
because
your
of that.
master's and you were talking to your
after
dad.
the master's degree, my dad and I were looking for something to do, and I literally bought a kit at a local brewing supply store. They still do exist as a brewery, Black Hawk Brewing down in Killeen, but they were originally a supply store. And there's all sorts of, that's almost a different episode entirely. So I took that kit home and I showed my dad that, and I was like, he had this old 15-gallon wash pot,
Okay.
like one of the old military kettles that you would boil on over a fire or a pit. And I asked him where that was, and he's like, it's like out back with weeds growing all in it. And I said, well, we're getting it, we're cleaning it up, and we're making sure it's working. And he's like, well, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to brew some beer. And he goes, no, we're going to brew some beer.
So did he brew before?
Yes.
And you didn't know that?
I did not know. My dad is a criminal when it comes to that, actually. So back in the early 70s,
Okay.
when it was technically still illegal,
That's
he made some trash can beer. So
I
yeah.
love that.
I love a good rebel story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I
That's-
really
that's
just threw my
fantastic.
dad under the bus on this one. I don't think they can think the statute of limitations got to be.
No, we're good. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
good.
probably fine.
No, that's so well, okay. Every time I've gone in the shop, if Garrett's not there, then his dad's there.
Yeah.
Or mom, sometimes your wife, sometimes his daughter. I mean, it's a family business. There's no other way to put that. You call up to the shop, you don't know whose phone it's going to go to that day. And I'll be like, "Oh, hey, this is Israel." Or I'll say this is Izzy because I go by Izzy a lot. Which really throws them off because your daughter's name, they call her Izzy.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, this is Izzy with a man's voice. And I always get either your mom or dad. And they go, huh? Takes them a second. I'm like, oh, sorry, Israel. I was just calling about a beer question. They're like, oh, well, he's out of town. He'll be back in about 2 days, but you can hit him up on Facebook if you need to. And or they'll be like, what's the question? I'm like, oh, I got this stuck this, or I got a fermentation question, or I saw this thing. When are you going to carry it? You know, whatever it is, or it's not. It shows out of stock on the website, but if he's out of town, maybe he hasn't updated it yet. So do you have it in that kind of thing?
Yeah, our website, a little
Well,
cry out
it's a
to
pain.
anyone who can really help us with the website is welcome to just raise your hand or call the shop, and
I think it's a great starting point to get people to contact you
yeah,
because that's what I'm saying. Just call.
yeah.
Just call.
Yeah.
It's Craft Brewing Shop, but just call. If you have a question, if you don't have it, I can't tell you how many times you've sent me somewhere else. I called you to get a CO2 bottle filled one time.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't do it. Let me give you the phone number. And it's the cheapest place I've found in all of Texas to get my bottle refilled.
And we actually do go there. That's another business, Waco Carbonic. We do go there, and we get our stuff filled, and we keep some of those on reserve for the weekend because every once in a while they're not open on the weekends.
Yep.
And so everyone comes in, they're like, I got an emergency, and it's like, we got an emergency price for this.
Yeah.
Just so
Yeah.
you know.
Well, convenience.
Yeah, well, that's just it. But we will help people out. We understand that people get stuck.
Yeah.
You're going to get in situations where it's just like,
You get halfway through brewing and realizing I don't have that one ingredient I need, and it's Sunday night.
and we live 20 miles out of town. We've actually drove in for a Sunday night just to open up for one person,
To get the thing they need.
just to get that.
Well,
one
because
thing.
you're a brewer. That's why.
that's just it.
You've been in that spot.
It sucks.
It, well, people that brew, it's like it's people always say like, oh, it's like baking a cake. It's so much more than that though, because it's not just the time and energy. You have like the sense of pride. Like we were talking about this. When you skunk a batch, like if you mess something up, it hurts.
It's like baking a souffle, the cake. You know, it's
There's a lot of steps.
There's a lot of steps, and if you mess it up, everything's just going to collapse. But at the same point in time, I don't want to deter people because
Right.
we've got a lot of sort of warm up recipes. The first thing that I learned on was actually an American amber, and I really recommend those. Those are almost
little more forgiving.
Yeah, they're almost fault proof. I mean, if you get a little mistake here or there, you know, it's not really going to affect the overall product. You know, everyone comes in there all like, I want this ultra light. And it's sort
Oh, that's hard.
there's
hard.
just no room for mistake. You know, and unfortunately, it's like hearing. Not everyone can sing, but everyone can hear, right? Not everyone can brew, but everyone seems to be able to taste. And they all have this preconceived notion as to what it should be. And it's almost always based off of something they can buy in a store at mass produced that, you know, like Budweiser. I'm going to say the thing the professionals do that's extremely great that the home brewers need to work on.
replication.
It's the reproducibility of it. If you can make a light, that's fantastic. If you can make the same light with the same flavor profile all the time, then you're a professional.
Yeah.
And in fact, actually, Budweiser doesn't do it all the time.
Oh, wow.
They actually have an outlet that you're familiar with for their mistakes that are still sellable.
What?
Yeah.
What? Wait, I don't know this.
Oh, you've had it, I guarantee.
Hold up. What?
A mistake Bud Light.
Wait, you say mistake. So like if they make, because they make gallons,
Yes.
tens of thousands.
Yes. And as
So if they taste it and go, ooh, it's not Bud Light.
yes. But it's still a decent beer. And
Sure.
It
It just
passes
didn't-
all the QCs. What
Gotcha.
do you do?
It's still perfectly safe. It's
you-
perfectly drinkable. It just doesn't have that taste. It's not Coke. It's RC.
Or in this case, it's not Budweiser. It's Natural Light.
Really? Hold up. Wait. So then how do they replicate natural light?
They don't bother. They wait for a mistake and they put it in
Are
the can.
you serious? So that's why it's cheap. It's just it's a cost loss. Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's smart.
Oh, well, I mean, of course it's smart. It makes sense. But
Yeah. And if you like Coors, it's Keystone.
wow.
Well,
that is true because
with
I
the
don't like
price-
natural light.
With the price of natural light, I don't think the people are really connoisseurs if that's their go-to.
However, I guarantee there's been some times you've had a Natural Light and you're like, oh my God, this is horrible. And then there's sometimes you drink a Natural Light and you're like, you know,
It's not that bad.
Actually, was
It's not
pretty
that
good.
bad. Yeah.
You know, and
Has my taste changed?
yeah, the taste of the thing changed.
Wow.
I guarantee
That's so weird.
Some of the mass producers do it. Shiner, they rush the product, and
I've
so,
heard that.
So
Because I've had 2 bottles of Shiner that don't taste the same. Like I'll buy 2 6-packs and come home and I'm like, ugh, not that one.
take the put it in the back of your fridge for a month,
Okay.
maybe 6 weeks. Come back to it, and you're gonna be like, man, this is one of the best Shiners I've ever had.
It just didn't mellow out yet.
They didn't age it. It's
Wow.
they're trying to move it quickly, and if they jump the gun a little, and it's just a little,
Well, you got to keep up with them thirsty Texans.
Yeah.
well,
Well, what's
there you go.
What's funny about that is I can't tell you how many times, like in college and in the military, I buy a 6-pack, try one, it's like, oh, this is gross.
Yeah.
Put it in the fridge, and then
Forget about it.
6 weeks later, or something like, man, I really want something, and I look, it's like, oh, I forgot I had this. It's like, oh, this is better than I remember it being.
So one of the best beers, one of the best. I could call it a mass produced, but it's a very niche.
Well,
one.
so not to get off topic with that, but because there are literal like standards. You have nano breweries, microbreweries, breweries, and then you have like what I called like the mafia. Right. I mean, you got
mass produced
you have
ones.
like Molson, Coors, Miller. Right. I mean, they're in a whole nother stratosphere.
And their reproducibility is amazing. The
Yeah.
fact that they can have multiple breweries
All
throughout
over the country,
and
yeah.
it's just like McDonald's. Isn't it amazing that you can have a McDonald's? A
Yeah.
Big Mac tastes the same as it here as it does in Seattle.
It tastes the same in Paris.
There you go.
No, I mean, like when I went to Europe, that was kind of the joke is that I got off there. I'm like, these French fries they're not similar. They're exactly the same.
Because they use very specific potatoes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has to be this kind of potato. You have to feed your animals this food.
Yeah.
It has to be this kind of animal, and they control all the variables.
I feel like some of the like really major breweries catch a lot of flack because we make fun of them. Okay, we do. Like as home brewers, you're right. You have to give them their respect though, that they can hit that target every single time. And if they don't, they can still sell it as natural light and make a profit.
If they don't, they still make a profit.
They still make a profit.
They're geniuses, really, in a lot of regards.
But is that why they keep their recipes so simple? Because look at Bud Light. Bud Light, I mean, they caught a lot of flack for that. I would have never intentionally admitted that they use rice, but it's on the packaging.
Yeah.
But is that why they use? Because I mean, let's be honest. From a brewing standpoint, rice is replicable. It's very. I mean, it's because grains. You've got drought tolerances. You've got how much water it got, how it was harvested, how it was malted. I've used like pilsners.
Yeah.
Pilsner grain malts, the actual. That's the fun thing about going down there. You see the raw ingredients of beer.
Actually, we have. We're one of the few outlets for Texas malts.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So
in the big bags full, and then like you got like a bin. You open it up, and I did not know this was a thing. He's like, "Hey, stick your hand there, grab some, eat it." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, taste it." I'm like, "What am I tasting?" He goes, "No, the grains."
Oh, okay.
And I was like, "I didn't know that was a thing." He goes, "Of course that's a thing."
you
So
have to chew the grain to get an idea as to the ultimate flavor.
And my mind was blown. I'm like, wow, yeah. He's like, you taste that little bit of honey in the background? I'm like, I do. He's like, yeah, if you should use this one, but then don't use this hop because that hop will hide this. And the man is like on another level when it comes to like beer knowledge. But here's the other thing, and I want to give you props on this. He has never ever come out as like intimidating to me, which is why everybody, I don't care. Kevin, our friend that owns a brewery in Waco,
Yeah.
he brags about him. We brew beer with Kevin. And we go up there and he comes over. He's like, "Oh, what you guys doing?"
Kevin
"Oh,
gives me a lot of credit because Kevin himself is actually an extremely good brewer.
Yes.
In fact, Waco is blessed with a lot of extremely
5 now, right?
great brewers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But to be able to have this, it's humility. That's what it is. I'll tell you exactly what you remind me of. You're talking the story about your dad brewing. That's what I feel like with you. I feel like I'm brewing with my fun uncle.
Oh, there you go.
Like, and I'll say like, "Well, I really wanted to do this," and he does that like kind of like when you grab the wrong tool, right? And your dad's kind of like, okay, let's see how that turns out." It's not like I'm waiting for this to fail. It's like this is the teaching moment, because if it turns out, man, you learned a new trick in your toolbox. If it doesn't, I learned a new tool.
Well, we've actually one of the most amazing beers that we've had was actually done by my dad and my daughter, and he just sort of let her do something like that. And she messed up the hops because the hop schedule was supposed to start with a certain one and end with a different one. She sort of inverted those two and then made a Mexican cerveza, and we entered that as an American light. It's technically what it is. Mexico being North America, let's just move on, right?
Yeah.
But it is a corn adjunct light, and it took first in the we're in the Shriners.
Right. Yeah.
So
Because they have a huge homebrewing club.
they have a national competition. We took first in that one. It's
incredible.
It's the only blue ribbon we got
On a mistake,
on a mistake.
which what
It's not a mistake. It's a happy accident.
I was going to say. That's
Yeah,
what Bob
Ross said,
Bob
yeah.
Ross, yeah.
That's a
Totally
happy
Bob
little
Ross
accident.
moment.
And I'll tell you something that he's always told me is, it doesn't matter what you do, document it. I never took notes when I did stuff
Great logs are how you
Yeah.
get reproducibility. And what's really bad
because
is,
you wouldn't have known you made a mistake.
well, what happens if you really want to do it again?
Right.
You know, I can go back to those notes now.
Yeah.
And I can look at those notes and go, okay, I know
That's what
I'm
she did.
supposed
She
to do
flip-flopped
this.
those
I'm
two.
supposed to flip these
How
two.
funny is that?
I can even tell you, the yeast that we use and all that other stuff.
Right.
It should all be recorded down.
You were talking about like the beer in the back of the fridge. I have a question about that.
Yeah.
How long is that beer good for? Okay, let me rephrase this. How long is a beer in the back of my fridge safe to drink? Because we've talked about a lot of the people that are like, I call them gatekeepers, right? And we've had lengthy discussions on this. People that have just destroyed me in the comments online about, "Oh, you're teaching people wrong. They're going to lose fingers and trips to the ER, and
Wow,
it's
really?
unsanitary." And
I could say the same about fishing.
I can say the same about cooking chicken.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Like, I mean, you can die from chicken. And we've talked about it's like,
Ask other chickens; they do.
yeah. And I'm like, I have never in my life drank a beer that made me sick at any point. And Skip, who we all know and love, has always told me, if it tastes bad, don't drink it.
Yeah.
That's his rule of homebrewing.
It's honestly a really great rule of thumb. I'm going to tell you that it really depends upon the beer. There are some beers that are going to taste better at a certain age.
Okay.
For example, an IPA.
Okay.
If you have an IPA, it's going to
India
taste,
Pale Ale, for those that don't know.
Taste good for the first month that it's servable. And keep in mind that, you're going to ferment it for, 2 to 3 weeks. You're going to maybe let it age on additional hops. We call that dry hopping, putting in the hop after it's fermented. And you're going to let those phenols and everything get ripped out of the
Because it's like the
beer.
oils. That's what you get the flavor from.
Yeah, and all of that stuff is in that pollen. I hit the mic.
Oh, you're good.
All of that stuff is in the pollen. That's in the little pellets. It's all condensed in there and freeze dried, so it's pretty much shelf stable. And I say pretty much, it's measured in years.
Because hops is a preservative. That's why hops are even in beer.
Well, it's a bittering agent.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, they found that not only did it bitter the beer the way that the yeast needed it to be bittered, because the yeast needs a very specific lower pH, believe it or not. Yeast likes somewhere around 5.2 on the pH scale. So you can use the hops to bitter the beer and set that, but it also imparts a different flavor. Like an American hop will have sort of this citrusy, piney. There was a Sam Adams commercial. I referenced Sam Adams commercials a lot for some reason. I think it's because Jim
They're
Cook,
beautiful commercials.
he's really good at communicating a lot of stuff that
Because he started as a home brewer.
well, and he did, and like to reference something that we were talking about earlier, he has a commercial where he says that the professionals throw away as much beer as he makes annually.
That's crazy.
And so, and that's the stuff they couldn't sell.
That's the stuff that's not even natural light quality.
That's the
Wow.
stuff that's outside of the natural.
That's
light.
unnatural light.
You know, it's really
Yes,
funny. I
absolutely.
can't wait to tease one of my friends because he despises Bud Light
Yeah,
with a passion,
but loves natural light.
but he drinks natural light. And I cannot wait to like shatter.
It's probably his wallet that's making the decision on
Well,
that
true.
one. So,
But you know, it's so funny. Like we were talking. It's hard not to be a beer snob, and especially when you get into home brewing, you have to be able to respectfully tell someone when they make a mistake, because we've also gone to some like homebrew meetings, and those are not moments when everybody wants you to just be like, it's amazing.
yeah,
I mean, that's not helpful.
And then you taste it, and it's like it's got a little slight Band-Aidy flavor
Right.
to it, and you're like, yeah.
I have
think we-
taken stuff and he'll taste it and be like, I don't know how he did this. Okay. Again, I tell everybody, I love brewing. My job is to get people interested in brewing. I am not an expert at all. This is what an expert looks like. And he would say that completely like, oh, I'm still learning.
yeah.
Yes, but he's at the college learning level and I'm still in like elementary school,
I
right?
didn't say where I was at on the ladder there.
But I brought something to him and I was like, hey, I like this, but there's something off. I didn't know how to describe it. He took a sip of it and he goes, did you crack the lid on your pot while you were boiling it? I was like,
Oh yeah.
see, I'm like,
It's like a rookie mistake.
no, I don't. What are you talking about? And then he goes on to tell me, he's like, oh, well, yes, explain.
Yeah. So
He's like, oh, that's the popcorn taste.
there's
I'm like, that's
three-
what it is.
there's 3 reasons why you boil beer, and we talked about one of them is to add the hops and set the bittering.
And to sterilize. And,
Yeah. The other thing is to break down proteins,
Mm-hmm.
which you'll see at the end of it. It literally, you get that ropey protein
Mm-hmm.
strains, and when
it tastes like sweet tea to me when you make beer before you actually ferment it.
It is grain tea, and in fact, actually, in some countries, they actually just
Drink
bottle it at that point.
Really?
And give it to kids. Absolutely.
I mean, it's because it's got all the nutrients.
Yeah.
It's got all the sugars. It's got all of the things you need, and then all you're doing is adding the yeast to eat the sugar to make it into carbonated beer.
But the third thing you're doing is boiling off off chemicals.
Was it amylase?
No, amylase is used to break down the sugars. We can put a pin in that one.
Okay.
The one that you had was dimethyl sulfide. So
That's what it is. Which sounds really scary when he goes, it's the dimethyl sulfide that's not coming out of your beer. And I was like, oh my God, are people going to die? He's like, no, it's just why it tastes like popcorn.
So it makes the popcorn taste.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he knew that from tasting it, because how many batches did you probably, let's say, screw up before somebody told you, like, hey, you need to crack the lid on that pot a little bit?
I've been brewing it long enough where that was not my first time tasting it. So
that level of helpfulness, that's what I tell people. Like, if you have to have a little bit of a thick skin when you get into a homebrewing group, because not every single batch you make is going to knock it out of the park. It's just not. I remember the first meeting we went to, you made the, I think it was the 777 or 777 or something like that. I don't remember it, but I remember he started off, he was like, well, we were supposed to do this. We didn't get that. So I'm going to disqualify myself from the competition. However, I think it came out really good. Let's taste it. And so, yeah, that's what we went with it.
It's like when you go see a mechanic, you want the mechanic that can listen to your engine.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, you need to get this spark plugs out. You need to get that changed.
You don't
Same
get
thing
that at
if-
O'Reilly's.
No,
yeah, that's what it is.
but that's sort of like the equivalent of what you're saying. Like you could taste it and be like, okay, I have enough experience with this process
Yes.
to know that when I did this is what I tasted. I'm tasting it here.
Yes.
Did you do this?
And when you get a room full of homebrewers, they just feed off of each other.
yeah.
And then one will be like, yeah, I taste the popcorn, but also this little note back here. And then you get one guy's like, I feel like you added this hop a little too early. I'm like, how did you even know what hop? But you know what? Over time, you start to really develop a
That's when
taste
we
for
start
it.
scaring the professionals.
Yeah.
The people that run breweries, they come in and we're like, you used caramel 40, didn't you? I'd say you used about a half a pound per 5-gallon batch. Is that right?
Yeah. And it's hard to do that and not come across as cocky. It's not cocky. It's a friend of mine has been telling me, because I don't just enjoy drinking the beer. I don't just enjoy making the beer. I love, and you've come up before when I used to do my like beer schools back in the day, and I like the history of it. Skip has always loved telling me the story that like beer, brewing,
Brewing
and
knock a little
Oh,
phlegm
yes.
out of my throat, will you? Just a bit. That'd be fine.
brewing in general is probably responsible for saving more people's lives than any medical anything that was ever invented.
Wild turkey?
No, actually. Oh, so that one. Sorry, let's cut over here to it. You know what? I'll take a smidge as well with a few cubes of ice. So actually, it's the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond. That's my go-to on my bourbon. My brother turned me on to it.
That's what I took Brandon for his birthday.
Yeah, it's one of those like,
Because you were talking about it, I was like, you know what? I'll just get that for him.
yeah, it's like a nice, well-round, inexpensive.
Since we are doing the drink snob thing, let me explain to the audience what I was
Yes.
just doing there. Is first off, I'm letting it warm a little in my hand. Second off, I'm putting my nose on it. I'm having it neat so that I can get the original.
Perfect, thank you.
And I'm just getting the nose on it. The wonderful, the
You start to get all the little-
and the vanillas and the slight cherries and all that other stuff that come out in it. Because really, taste starts in the nose. So you really want to.
I always love that old thing I do with my kids where I put the clip on their nose,
Yeah.
and you blindfold them,
Yeah.
and you give them an apple and a potato. You can't tell the difference if your nose is plugged. They taste exactly the same.
I've heard it an apple and an onion.
Oh,
And
really?
That's even more pungent. So yeah.
Wow. It's also why,
that is good.
gentlemen, may we, if
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
mind, this is the other most important thing. Cheers.
It's like that clip. I think it was maybe bourbon or whiskey, but it was I don't know if it's real, but the dude, he puts it and he sniffs it and then he like splashes it out.
Yeah.
And then he does like 2 or 3 times where he actually tastes it.
Right.
Like that seems like a waste, but
Well, that's like a whole nother level. That's like when you get into the cigar aficionados. We had Joe on, and he was talking about the what was the sommeliers, and like that level.
yeah.
I've actually thought about going to get my first level Cicerone because there's 4 levels, And the first one is just an online test, basic general knowledge of beer styles and everything else. But it's like $130 for the test.
Yeah, just so that you have bragging rights.
Well, I think it would be fun. I want to learn more. Like I said, it's not just it's not coming from like a snobby side of it. It's that I love being. I feel like I have a nose for certain things, and I want to develop it as a skill. And I know that with that, I could dive in deeper with it.
Before we get too far, since
Yeah.
we started drinking a little bit, would you mind if we brought out the cola and?
Oh yes,
I was
no.
actually looking forward to that.
Yes, let me grab it.
Let's. I mean, before
Well,
we
while
get
I'm
too
grabbing
much-
it, can you tell everybody about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we make sodas, and yeah, it started with root beer, and sort of went to root beer and ginger ale, and then we came up with our own cream soda. I think I make the best
Cream soda is the best.
I think I make the best cream soda on the planet, frankly. And then we went orange cream and mix that together. And I can't say dreamsicle in the ads anyway, but
Thanks.
go ahead.
so which is
Here,
this
I
one?
was going to say here, don't open up all
Oh,
of them.
okay, perfect.
Maybe save one for your kids. Go ahead and put a little
On the bourbon.
on
Okay.
the bourbon. Fill it up with that. You'll probably be very satisfied with that. So we really struggled with colas. This has about 13 different flavors in it.
Yeah, because that's the tricky. What is it? Dr. Pepper, where they always say 23 flavors or something. Like it's so much more deep than you think about. Wait, I gotta
go.
get his face over
I'm
here.
sorry, was that bad?
No.
No, he just got a little bourbon down the wrong pipe.
That is amazing.
Because it always has the most
Yeah.
interesting.
That is good.
Oh yeah.
Can
Can we get my
No,
face on
it
that?
went down the wrong. It went down the wrong too. That is fire, man.
Well,
that is
so
good.
okay. If you've ever been to like an old school soda shop, right? Because the trick is that they mix it. They don't. They don't. I mean, it's a handmade product.
pull it out here to where
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
get it on the camera. Right there. I got my
Perfect. Here, we can get it up
yeah,
here.
let's-
Get it up here. Get it nice and close. And they can get these at the shop. And he has all the different flavors. How many flavors do you have now?
we're up to 5 if I'm not mistaken. We
That's
got the
awesome.
cola, the orange cream, the regular cream, the ginger ale.
The orange cream
and
is very good.
that
It's
orange cream
sweet.
is-
I'm not a super sweet person.
we have probably about a 20-25% more sugar than most of the
It's
other
delicious. My kids love it. Every time I go to the brew shop, my 6-year-old doesn't want to wait in the car.
Can I say just how much I appreciate how simple the ingredients are? Also,
Yes.
like I have kids with allergies.
Yeah.
And so when
And there's
we're
nothing
looking at
that's in
things
there
that have,
that's not on there.
yeah,
Well, and I'll be perfectly honest. There is something that I want everyone to know, and that is that I do put lactose milk sugar in on the
Okay.
on the root beer, the cream, and the orange cream.
And they're listed on
They're
there.
listed on there
Yeah.
as allergens. Yeah.
And I know what you mean because yes, and I have brought one home before and the root beer, and I poured that over. I feel bad that I used cheap vanilla ice cream
Yes.
because it was that good on cheap ice cream, and I was like, I feel like I wasted this
Yeah,
root beer on
sounds
this. Like
sinful.
it was sinful, but the root beer was that good.
So the cola, what really inspired us is we wanted something that would mix extremely well with the bourbon. And,
That's delicious.
So, yeah, we
Tomorrow.
definitely.
I bet that makes a mean Jack and Coke.
Yeah. I'm if it's okay with you, I'm not going to share this with my kids because tomorrow I'm going to go to my bourbon meeting, which if you're free tomorrow night, if you'd like to come as my guest, the Hill County Bourbon Society is having our meeting at the little cigar lounge, Skip's Old Pub. If you feel so inclined, please come as my guest. No pressure.
I'll
I'm going to take this. No, that's fine. I'm going to take this because I have some bourbon enthusiasts,
Nice.
and I want to share that with them because that's really good.
Yeah.
I like that you call it a dessert soda. It is like this is the old school. This is my dessert. I don't want anything with it. I
was
want
really
this.
inspired by some things online. There was this YouTube thing where he said that soda should just be called liquid candy. It's like, okay, I'm just going to call ours liquid candy because that's it. And the phrase a dessert soda was not trademarked. And so we actually
Is it trademarked now?
now it is.
Love it. I love that. Well, that's the other thing is that you do a lot of things
Yes.
that you do well. Because like your
Thank you.
tea, no, I mean it. Like his tea selection is incredible.
Yes.
I'm not a big tea person, but I
Somewhere
have
around
some friends who are, and that's where they go get tea. Tim, one of our friends,
Okay.
Doc's oldest son, Tim, he goes down there and gets his tea. And I know Doc has come in to see you
So-
a couple of times. And
You also sell kombucha?
We used to carry the SCOBY. I've got the tea, and I hate to say the tea and the know-how, and you're going to have to put your hands in the SCOBY. The problem with
I cannot stand kombucha.
Oh, really?
Like
It's
I love
delicious
people that
when
are
done
into
right.
it. I know it's just I can't do it honestly. But you and I've talked about this, like Flemish Reds
Yeah.
and saisons. Anything in that, like, please don't. I'm not insulting it. It all tastes like feet to me.
Okay, so there are good sours and bad sours.
Yeah.
I had a sour. It was it actually won in the state level
Okay.
for the Shrine. And be perfectly honest, it was the hardest fermentation I've ever done. It was a stepped fermentation. So a lot of times with fermentations, you have to pay attention to the yeast, which is essentially a bacteria that you're working with, and the temperatures at which it would run. And so I started out with, what did I start out with? I think I started with the lactobacillus,
Yeah,
because that
that's an English variety, right?
yeah,
Of bacteria.
well, that actually is what you use in cheese. So
Really?
yeah, and so yogurt and stuff like that. So
Don't bring up yogurt. That's my kryptonite.
So
So
lactobacillus, that means it
was
uh,
sour. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, it consumes, so it's
That's what's in sauerkraut.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
So I started with that and fermented till the pH dropped to the range I was looking for, and then heated the vessel to 85, which would suppress that. And then I ended up putting in a Brettanomyces, which is
Okay.
a Bruxbret, which is a funky wild yeast that most people try to suppress because it tastes like, some people have called it barnyard horsehair, but I
Gotcha.
know when it gets hot, it does bubblegum flavors.
Interesting.
And so pushed it to
Wow.
the range where it did bubble gum, and then I finished with, we've talked about the Kveik maybe.
Oh my god, the
Kveik
greatest yeast ever for home brewing.
for Texas,
Yes. Oh yes,
Texas.
yes.
Why just for Texas?
because it's stable over up to 100 degrees. I have lagered in an open vessel at 105 with it.
So to put this into simplest parlance, if you're baking a cake, you have to follow a very stringent recipe.
Yeah.
Brewing is similar. There is some interpretation, but say you wanted your brownies to, we just made brownies tonight before our little thing. I can't just go from 325 to 525 on my oven
Right.
to bake them quicker. It doesn't work, right? With beer, each variety of hops and even the grains and how they break down in starches, there's all like temperature ranges. Yeast is one of those things. It is a living, breathing thing.
And it produces different flavors at
Yes.
different temperatures.
If you stress it, it tastes like butt.
Wait,
It's bad.
okay. Depends.
It depends on the
On
yeast.
the yeast,
It does depend on the
you're
yeast.
going for.
If it also, I think it was either you or Kevin was the one who told me yeast is kind of like a frat boy. It can only drink so much alcohol before it passes out.
Yeah.
So yeast has a target range for where it likes to be in the brew. Like, oh, I want to make a 15% beer. Okay, you're going to have to pick a very specific yeast for that
Yeah.
because some frat boys will pass out at 8%.
Yeah.
So you have to find the right frat boy for that, right?
And as far as this is concerned, the Kveik yeast will go up to 15%.
Yes.
So we can actually use them for mead. In fact, I was going to.
I've used it now twice, and it not only worked amazingly well, but he's right. The biggest thing for why, like, I started with mead because it's very forgiving, and I love it because you build your confidence. And then when you go from mead to beer, I feel like it's in the big boy sports now. Even though they're very much their own thing, and there's nothing wrong. It's not like, oh, you're still in the minor leagues. You can be very good with mead. I just wanted more challenge, which will lead into something that we want to talk about, which is distilling, which is the next. It's like that's like the collegiate athlete D1 division.
But let's
But-
finish this,
well, yes,
this
yes.
thought process
But
first.
Kveik yeast in Texas, like out here in my garage. Now, granted, now I have my lovely air conditioner. I keep this room fairly comfortable. Most people don't have that. You have to keep a lot of yeast I would say the generic rule of thumb is 70.
Ish,
That's
yeah.
70-ish.
68 to 70 is ideal.
Most people's houses aren't even that cool. And as yeast does its thing, it generates heat. So just because it's in a house that's set to 70 degrees, your container might be 74, 75.
And there are different things that you can do for that.
Yeah.
One of the easiest
Cooling
things,
it down, keeping it at
look,
temperature.
You've got a wall unit right there.
Yeah.
One of the easiest things, if we put a thermometer right under it, I bet you it's 65 right under it.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
I
if
used
you
to
clear it
ferment
out-
in one of my other fridges.
Yeah, clear out that space.
Yep.
Make a little,
And sit it right in front of the air conditioner. Yep. Yep.
I'll bet you'll hold 65 degrees pretty.
When I did
stably.
my loggers back in the day, I had an upright deep freezer over here, which unfortunately died again, and now it's finally gone. But I put my 15-gallon fermenter in it, and I used a Inkbird thermometer thing, and I had a little probe that went into my batch, and so the refrigerator was plugged into it. So when the probe got to a certain temperature, it turned off the fridge. When the probe hit the next temperature, it turned on the fridge. And so for the first couple of days, it would cycle on and on and on and off and on. I mean, all the time. But once it got pretty dialed in, as long as you didn't open and close that door a lot, it would hold at whatever you wanted. I did a lager at like 58 degrees.
Yep,
And it
that's
kept
good.
it kept it right there for like 3 weeks. And it came out really good. The downside is like now, I don't have my fermentation fridge anymore.
And if people go to our shop, we can show them techniques to get around that. There's pressure fermentation vessels. And
I was telling him that's the next thing I want to get into because that's
I want to do the Kveik yeast
Under pressure?
Under pressure.
at like 90 degrees.
I want to go back. To I want to go back to our Bochet recipe.
okay, hold on.
I want to
So,
see if we can just crack that.
My Bochet that I told you was the best batch of meat I ever made is our recipe.
Yeah.
We made this down at the shop, and I think both of us were like genuinely surprised at how because
The
it was a
look on
very
your
simple
face.
recipe. It was a very simple recipe, but it came out so damn good.
And it was just a racehorse. I mean, it
Oh
just
my God.
took off.
Yeah, and it
You know?
was 5 days.
It was
It was-
drinkable in a month.
Right. No, but I mean, like the
me, that's-
fermentation process was like
It was about- it
5
was about,
days, 7 days.
Yeah, it was about a week.
It was crazy fast.
Wow. Hey, when you finish that,
Yes.
this is pretty solid just by itself. By the
Yeah.
way, I
Oh,
want
yes.
to try it just by itself.
You'll notice I've been
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
pretty greedy.
Well, I saw
on
you
my
doing
own
that. I
here.
was like, man, I want to try that too.
Yeah, I'm
And
sorry,
is-
I probably shouldn't take it all.
Like I told you, if I
Well,
go,
here you can have some mine if you want.
if I go without my kids, they're mad,
yeah.
and I
Like,
feel
as
bad
far as
because every
just
time
those-
I go in there, my son's like, "Can I have a soda?" And your dad or your mom's like, "Absolutely, here you go." And they pour him a soda or something. I'm like, "Son, we can buy a soda." She's like, "We love to give kids samples." I'm like, I need to just go in there and be like, "I need a 6-pack to go."
You
like,
know, I just want to give kids a bunch of sugar and caffeine.
Send them on their way.
That's what I said. I told you, he's like the fun uncle.
Yeah.
And then every time I go in there, my wife, as soon as they get out of the car, she's like, "Behave."
You we're gonna have to take a field trip there one day because that
You
I've
haven't
never
been.
been there. I've never been
There
there.
you go.
It's I mean, not all craft brew shops are the same. And I tell people that. I have gone into some, and I've told him. I've gone into some shops, and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I brew mead." And they're like, "Oh, we don't do that." And I'm like, I've been told." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I just need to get some ingredients."
Come on, honey, water, yeast,
Right.
thyme.
Oh my god. or when I'm like playing around, like I'm like, "Oh, I want to do a braggot." Right? I want to. A
a what?
braggot is like it's like a weird bastard child of a
okay.
mead and a beer kind of together.
Can we sidebar that one real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah.
Because I want to go back to what a braggot is, or maybe we should just take this off ramp. So with a braggot,
Well, we need to say like what mead is, and then that leads into braggot. Like,
so the easiest way for me to explain it, though, just if I may go forward,
please.
is the Vikings every once in a while would come across bad ale. What do I mean by every once in a while? Like every day. And then they would come across bad mead, right? And what they discovered is, well, screw it, just mix the two together equally and drink it anyway.
Yeah.
Is it still bad or is it
No.
like
Yeah, it
offset?
was still bad, but for some reason it just worked.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
how
what
would you
braggot is.
intentionally make that then?
You wouldn't. It was kind of like
A
what I
lot
said.
of times
What do you
it
do
was
with
getting rid of bad stuff?
what do you do with, well, we were talking about this before. What do you do with wine when it goes bad?
Yeah.
You distill it into brandy.
Or
What do you do with
cook
brandy
it,
when it
yeah.
goes bad? Well, yeah, that's true. Or you use it into vinegar. If your wine goes bad because you fermented it wrong. Skip told me a long time ago when I made my first batch of mead. He goes, "Don't throw it away if it's bad." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "If you taste it and it tastes like vinegar, you made vinegar." And I was like, "Well, that's bad." He goes, "No, it's vinegar. Just cook with it." I was like, "I have 5 gallons of vinegar." And he goes, "You have 5 gallons of the best meat marinade you will ever have." And I'm not going to lie. I messed up a batch. I don't know what happened. I got some wild yeast. Something happened.
Yep.
It was perfectly safe. It just didn't taste good. It tasted like vinegar.
Yeah.
And I soaked a steak in it. That was the best steak I've ever had in my life.
So did it still taste like honey vinegar, I guess? It kinda had
It's sweet. It didn't taste like honey. It was vinegar.
It's just straight up vinegar.
It tasted
at that
like a
point.
sweet jar of pickles.
I got you.
So we have.
But I mean, that's what Chick-fil-A does with their chicken. They soak it in pickle juice.
Do they?
Yeah,
That's
they do.
that's why they put
Absolutely.
2 pickles on the sandwich, so you don't notice that that's where the pickle flavor comes from. Yeah, it's
Absolutely
pickle
they do.
juice.
I thought they just prayed over it and blessed it. Made it
It's
so-
the
Well,
Lord's
I'm sure
chicken.
they do that.
the Lord's chicken.
It's the Lord's chicken.
That's why they close Sunday. They're getting the poultry, but
Marinating
Well,
the
people
chickens.
always talk about with like when they say like, when I'm making meads or something, and I put fruit in it or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, that's not a mead." I'm like, "Okay, let's go back to this."
Okay,
when we
it's a
talk about
melomel,
when we talk about
technically, but-
beer, nobody argues when I say this is a stout or a lager. No one argues when I say they're both beer.
yeah.
Okay. Now you can get off into the weeds when it comes to beer because not all stouts are porters, but all porters are stouts, right? And other little things, but all beer basically falls into 2 categories. You have stouts
Ale.
and ale.
Ales and lagers.
Ales and lagers, because you've got stouts or ales,
Yeah, typically.
and then like and ales or ales. Farmhouse saisons or a variety of lager, like everything well, it depends on the yeast because you can do like a Kolsch, which is kind of weird because it's technically an ale, but it's made like a lager.
Yeah.
So you get like all this weird, but it's all under the umbrella of beer. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. When I say mead is beer.
Honestly,
It's the umbrella.
Can I just say, from my perspective, it's as though I'm sitting at a lecture and Obi-Wan Kenobi is giving a presentation, but Yoda's over here like, I don't know about that, but
Well, it's because people will want to die on this cross when it comes to mead for some reason. They're like, "Oh, well, it's only mead if it's honey, water, and yeast." Yes, that's called a show mead. It is mead.
May I ask exactly how many gallons have they brewed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
how many gallons do you have to brew to really gatekeep? That's
Well, in their mind, you don't have to brew any because you shouldn't brew unless you know what you're doing because it could kill people.
oh, okay.
And I'm like, "Oh my God."
Well, then you never get around to it.
But if you
I
look at
brew-
it as anything you put in mead changes it. It's kind of like it's all chicken. But if you add cashews, it's now cashew chicken.
See,
and if you add almonds, it's almond
If
chicken.
anyone talked like that to me, I would say,
Oh.
I do know what I'm brewing, and that's know what I'm doing. Oh, great whiskey. I do know what I'm doing, and that's why I brew so that I don't kill people.
Yeah.
But I would argue the more you know about it, the more the gatekeepers are just going to lose their mind because they don't have the experience. You have the experience. You can do these crazy things. And they're like, well, actually, that's not technically.
I just
I don't care. I had the
understand why they
experience.
do it. I don't understand. Like, why don't you want more people to be in your hobby? It's like,
They're
This
not
is-
happy
this
in their
is your
personal
argument,
lives.
and
is
I
that really
always
all
like
it is?
Probably.
I've always liked this. Go right ahead, state it, man, because people need to understand
Say
this.
it.
You know,
Say
it.
what?
You know what?
that yeah.
No, I mean, like, seriously, I don't understand
Gone
it.
into brewing shops.
Yes.
You've told people,
I'm making mead.
and
And they look at me like, "Oh, you're one of those."
and then your response is,
I'm going to go somewhere else.
well, okay. Before that, I think you usually go on this holier than thou rant of, I am bringing people into your shop.
Yes. Like
and
the
you
whole
should be
point,
happy.
the whole point of brewing is to expand my knowledge. Every time that I brew something, I love, like, people are always like, "Oh, why don't you make videos of you making mistakes?" I'm like, it's not that I don't want to post a video when I make a mistake because I don't want to look bad. I don't post a video when I make a mistake because it might not have been anything I did that actually equaled the outcome. Because sometimes you do everything right. You follow your notes. Like you said, the difference between a brewer and a professional brewer is the consistency. And even they screw it up sometimes.
This is why we call it craft, is because you're finding
Yes.
the craft.
Yes.
You have to work at this.
Yes.
This is
You are
like,
you are a tradesman.
this is like people making a quilt. You can't tell me that every quilt is perfect. And in fact, actually, some of them are just flat ugly.
Right.
And it just anyway.
Well, and also-
I don't mean to insult the quilting.
I used to quilt.
You have so many angry quilters come on our comments now, like, actually,
Yes.
Well, it's like
You
my whole.
clearly haven't made enough quilts.
you haven't made
Yeah,
enough quilts.
You're right.
It's like, did you ever bake with your grandma? Like,
No.
okay,
No.
Nobody buried her.
okay, like I remember baking and having my grandma try the cookies, and I would be like,
That can't we?
yeah, yeah. I remember baking and my grandma saying, "They're okay," right? And I'd be like, well, because I mean, even I knew. I'm like, they don't taste like grandma's cookies.
Yeah.
But she still wanted you to bake with her.
Yeah.
And she wanted you to experience it and to grow with it.
And
to this
even if
day,
you-
I can't make my grandma's cookies.
Even
Yeah.
if you make her recipe and completely screw it up, I'm sure somewhere she does smile.
Yeah.
Because you've kept it alive.
Yeah.
And that's the real important thing. And that's what I like about home brewing is that, we've talked about a lot of really weird recipes that a person's capable of doing, but, people have always asked me, they're like, well, where do you go to buy this? And it's like, you don't buy it. You have to make it.
Yeah, because the goal of craft brewing or home brewing is not to make something you can buy at the store.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get into it with that false hope of like, oh, okay, I'm not going to lie. I did it. I was like, honey, I'm going to start brewing my own beer in the garage because it's going to be cheaper.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do
That
that.
doesn't work. And also, it was like, I wanted to start off brewing beer that I already bought because I'm like, oh, I want to make my own. At the time when I first got into brewing, all I really drank was High Life. I'm like, I just want to make a nice light American lager. And then I found out that's really freaking hard to make.
I just want to make a nice souffle, and I want it to be perfect and light and fluffy every
It's
time.
like if you say, I want to get into baking, and then you say, let's start with creme brulee.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a hard thing to hit out of the gate.
So I want to say, like, my experience with home brewing is pretty limited compared to y'all's because I've done kits like Mr. Beer and stuff like that. But
That's good. You put you ahead of a lot of people. Trust me on that. You understand sterilization. You understand cleaning your vessel. You understand the process. You know that it's going to take some time. You know to wait until it goes clear before you try and throw it in a bottle.
Yeah.
Little things like that, and sterilize things. Clean.
I told him,
That's
if
the
you've
biggest
ever
thing.
made a drinkable beer out of a Mr. Beer kit, you're a brewer, man.
But I'll
Yes,
say this:
absolutely.
where I wanted to go with this is my experience with home brewing is that it's very different. In that if I say I like Shiner, so I'll go buy some Shiner. I keep it in my fridge and I drink it over time. If I brew some beer, first of all, I'm gonna have way more beer than I know what to do with. But I'm going to share that with my friends.
True.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like,
I got
hey,
way more friends than you know what to do with.
yeah. But you give it
So
some like,
true.
hey, try this. I made this at home. But it becomes much more social than just something I bought at the store. And there's a certain level of pride with it when it turns out like really good. It's like I really enjoy this. I made this. Like I'm not chugging it. This is my beer that I made, and I'm very proud of it.
One of my customers came in and just floored the rest of my family because he was talking about what he was making, and he went as far as he goes, yeah, I'm making a couple of beers because I want to make a wine kit, and I'm running my own still.
Oh, we're getting into that now.
Yeah, so we'll get to there. Let's
go down that road.
Anyway,
Like cork or what for that?
my family was like, well, which one's your favorite? And he goes, I don't know. I really don't drink them. And they were just floored by that. And I said, I get it. It's not the reason why he was doing it is because the question was, can I do it? He wanted to know if he was capable of doing it. And then he wanted to make things that were unique and reflective of himself and not something that, they could just get, And often people do this stuff and they put it in bottles and they give it out for Christmas, So,
So not to get sidetracked, but before we go off on the tangent, which is the thing I really want to pick your brain on, we've talked about this before, but before we go off on that tangent of distilling,
Yeah, that almost. I begin to wonder if we almost want to cut this at that point and make a second podcast,
Right.
Just the distilling.
Well, because-
there's so much stuff that happened, and there's so much to talk about.
Oh, yes.
Over the last week.
Yes, it has really become a hot topic, which is why when you were like, "Hey, can we talk about it tonight?" I'm like, "Yes, please," because I think for one, it's very relevant.
What I can do instead of making a totally separate podcast,
Yeah.
is I'll
Yes.
make a chapter.
Yeah, I think
So I'll
that-
put a chapter in this, and people will see it shows up on the timeline on the YouTube
Yes.
channel. So you can just go right to that chapter, and you hear about distilling.
Yes, because for all intents and purposes, before we dive into it, it is 100% illegal.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we're going to start there, and that's what the conversation starts with.
You'll notice I paused a little
Yes, yes.
because of the last week. It was
Yeah, well, exactly.
We're
So
in a gray area.
every chance that I get, I try to sample some. We've drank some of my mead before. You've had some of my mead before. This is actually from a friend of mine. This is a professional brewer called Hidden Legends, and they sent me a bottle of pomegranate mead. So I thought if it would be okay with y'all, we could try. This is from Montana. Last week we had another meadery that sent me some, but this is a delightful and popular flavor of pomegranate together with the taste of honey. So if you're so inclined
I'm
to taste
interested in
it,
what
The
that
big
will.
question will be, can we actually predict what they did with it? Now, notice there's almost no color indication.
it's beautifully clear.
Yeah. It is extremely clear. It's not sparkling in any way.
No, not sparkling. It's 12.5%.
Has a very
I do like mine with ice. So
it's a the nose is almost vegetable, not a fruit.
I do get the sweetness, but I don't smell honey.
No.
It's there only from like the caramel note of it, not from like, I don't know. It's people who like wildflower honey. This does not have a wildflower nose to it at all.
No. It has almost a wine element to it, which tells me that I think they threw in the fruit when they were fermenting it. It was
Yes.
fermented with the fruit.
With the fruit.
What would it?
Very nice. So it's
afterwards,
warm.
When else would you have added it?
after it ferments.
How would that affect the flavor of it?
The fruit's more bright.
Yeah, the fruit has a little bit more of a strong character. It also has a little less of a shelf life too.
Got you.
So you have to watch that. But if you do it more like a wine, it's going to have a better shelf life.
Yeah.
Because the yeast is going to essentially preserve and ferment the fruit, and so you're going to have a much more stable shelf product.
And I do love how they put no added sulfites right on the bottle.
Good, because I
Yes.
do not like sulfite.
I'm with you on that. I wanted to point that out with him because mead is regulated as a wine in America.
Yeah.
Which is why, and if you guys are so inclined, look up Hidden Legends online. I don't get any props for this, guys. They literally just sent this to me to drink.
How are they going to find it if it's hidden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you Google Hidden Legends Meadery, you will find it. They have a huge selection of variety, and they will ship it to your front door in all 50 states.
Nice.
Because it's wine. Now, in Texas, we can't get beer delivered to our front door, but you can get wine. I like this. It's warm. Like, even on ice, and I don't know how to describe that. It has a nice palate to it. It's not
It could
tanniny.
be the percentage where we at.
12.5.
Oh, I thought I saw
It's a little bit lower. It's a little bit lower. That one we had last time was like 16%, and it was...
I was going to guess with it fermented with the fruit, it was somewhere around 15, but and it does have a detectable
the alcohol note to it.
alcohol nose.
Yeah. It's not fusely, though. It doesn't have that, like, pungently.
So you said that was 12%?
12.5. And it's still residually sweet, but not overbearing. A lot of times with mead, and we've talked about this, like when you go to like a festival or something, it's like, I feel like I'm getting honey water with alcohol in it.
It's got a really nice honey
Yes.
flavor in it.
Yes.
I'm really enjoying that.
I think when you have someone that goes to like a Ren fair or something like that, and they're like, "Oh golly, look, there's mead, guys. I want to try the mead." I think
You've had that mead,
yeah.
and you were like, it's terrible.
Well, I think that's why they go heavy on the honey flavors because people associate the honey with mead. So when you go to a Ren fair or something like that, and you buy mead, you expect to taste the honey.
So there's a way to cheat that, and they might have done it here. So my favorite way to sweeten a mead after fermenting is cup of water, cup of honey, cup of sugar.
Just back sweeten it.
Yeah, just back sweeten it.
Yeah, I've done
but
that.
Before doing that, it's good to add something like you mentioned earlier, the Camden tablets, the sulfites.
Yep.
A metabisulfite, which will stop the yeast from fermenting.
Otherwise, your cork goes
Yeah,
right out the top.
and it gets sparkly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't.
Is that what clumps everything together?
No. It basically it's like it kills yeast.
Yeah.
It doesn't
you.
kill it. The metabisulfite prevents it from replicating.
I think
that
the
the
sulfates. That's the potassium sorbate.
Sorbate. That's right.
Potassium sorbate messes with the cell wall.
That's what
of
it
the,
is.
of the yeast,
And it can't replicate.
reproduce.
So like when I say I stop my yeast before I bottle it, I put in both. I do metabisulfite and sorbate. That's why I always get them
And I use
confused.
sorbate almost
Really?
exclusively.
Because if you don't, then the cork might.
yes.
It'll continue to ferment.
So why is that not a problem with beers then?
Well, but number one with beers, you want it to
Carbonate in the bottle.
carbonate. Yeah. So often we put in. Remember, I mentioned the corn sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So corn sugar is a bottling sugar that you would put in right before putting it in the bottle to naturally carbonate.
He actually makes
beer.
he sells these little eggs,
Yeah.
and they're designed for a bottle of beer. So when you're done, you just drop one, and it's pre-measured for 12 ounces. So you
Like
drop
when
it.
you're, when you're bottling the beers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you drop one egg in, and then you fill it up, and then you cap it. And then the yeast that's still alive in the beer eats that little bit of sugar, and it's just enough to carbonate the beer.
And if I may,
And it takes weeks.
The bottles themselves are designed to handle quite a bit of pressure. You can handle up to 60 psi in a standard soda or beer bottle, and when it comes to the champagne bottles, they're designed to go as high as 90.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why they have the little cage. The cage isn't so much for looks as it's
wire-
to
the
literally
wire cage.
hold the cork on.
That's why the kombucha people like to use them, is because they're so high pressure, and they're usually very natural on their carbonation for
Yeah.
kombucha.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky to do carbonated meads.
I feel like I'm learning so much just
Oh,
sitting
yeah.
here.
Well, that's just it. See, when it comes to information, I've always jokingly said I'm full of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So to circle back to this, I put brewing into the following categories. I think that the easiest thing to get started with is mead because it's 3 ingredients. You don't have to worry about all of the like the fruit and stuff from like wine.
I have an easier one.
What's easier than mead?
Cider.
That's true because a lot of times, I did a lot of sizers when I first started, which is a mead that you use like apple juice as an adjunct, so that you don't have to use straight honey.
So what goes in a cider that makes
Okay,
it so much easier?
organic apple juice. You need to have organic, or else they've probably already.
They
put
already
the
have a
Camden-
preservative in it,
They've
yeah.
already put the preservative in it.
And you'll notice anything that says sorbate on the back
Yeah.
of the bottle is a preservative.
You
Got
throw
you.
the yeast in it, and it just dies right away.
Yeah.
You're like, my God.
It's what
really?
makes it shelf stable.
Yes, exactly. But if you get an organic that has no preservatives to it, you literally just pour that into your fermenting vessel and throw a pack of yeast on it, put the lid on it, and you're done in 15 minutes. With the packets of yeast that we have, they generally take about 2 weeks. I tell people give it a month.
Right.
I like to give them the buckets with the taps on it.
Yeah.
And
So
they
you
just
take a
go
little
right ahead
sample.
and just
Yep.
tap right off the yeast.
I've got one of your brew vessels that has the little tap on it. I love it.
And you can have cider in 30 days, and it's awesome.
I mean, in terms of like ease, if you want to talk about like, oh, I really want to make something, I want to make my own alcohol for the fun of it, but I don't know where to start. Around the fall, my local Walmart gets it's like apple cider, but it's like a caramel apple cider. And I always look for it because nobody buys it. And you flip it over, and it's preservative free. Says it right on there.
Nice.
It says no, and it's organic, and it always has like a caramel, apple, cinnamon. It's like all this stuff in it. Literally, if you want to make your own, you don't need any other equipment. You could throw a balloon over the top of it, poke a little hole in your balloon, which makes a little redneck airlock. Is it great? No. Spend the 35 cents, buy you a decent airlock, but you could.
Oh, they're up to $1 now.
Oh, inflation. It's made it harder. But like, if you just want to be like, oh, I want to know what these guys are talking about, you buy a gallon jug of that, pour out a glass,
Yeah.
buy you a packet of yeast.
Don't
Buy bread yeast.
Don't use bread.
Don't use bread yeast.
Don't use bread yeast.
If you live in the middle of nowhere and you cannot find any wine yeast anywhere.
And somehow,
order it online. If
somehow
you're
you don't have a phone and you've never heard of Amazon.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
and you've never heard the website that I run of Craft Brewing
if you
Shop.
live close enough to a local craft brew shop,
Yeah.
go see them.
What will bread yeast do?
It just comes out tasting like
Okay, so
it tastes like alcohol in a bad way.
Yeah, you want the yeast designed for the thing you're trying to make. And we've talked about some very specific yeast.
Kvike yeast is what I recommend to people because it's forgiving. It's fast. It doesn't care about temperature. It's a little pricey.
It is.
I mean,
probably one of the more
if you're going to make a
expensive
gallon batch, you're going to spend $5 or $6 on yeast or more. Well, because I use about half.
Normally, with Kvikes, you can spend as much as 15.
Really? Has it
They're
gone up that
almost-
much now?
They're almost as expensive as the liquids. So
That still doesn't sound terrible though.
Well, but you're making a gallon,
Yeah.
right?
You're
Now,
making a
that
gallon.
would also make 5 gallons.
Spend maybe what, $5 on the cider itself,
Yeah.
$15 on the yeast.
Yeah. And all you do,
You paid on gas,
you take some. I mean, if you want to go all out, guys, behind me on this little shelf. Okay, I got one of these big glass jugs. Okay, get you one of those big glass jugs, like the old Ozarka jugs. You can find them online. I've used those little. You go to Walmart, little Rossi bottles of wine. Okay, it's like $7. Drink the wine, dump the wine out. I don't care. Cook with the wine, whatever you want to do. Dump it out. You have a perfect 1 gallon carboy.
yeah,
Go see Garrett.
absolutely.
Garrett will get you a little rubber, it's called a bung, little rubber stopper that goes in the top. It's got a hole in it and an airlock. Airlock and a bung. What are we looking at?
$5.
$5.
That's another $5 for a pack of yeast. So
And
it's
$5 for a pack of yeast. And you sell the bottles too, probably what, 10, 12 bucks?
Yeah, they're.
So
I'll
altogether,
agree with you if you get it through the cheap glass.
yeah, and you
thing,
just drink the
it's-
wine. But
yeah.
if somebody said like I wanted
About the
to
same
get into
price.
home brewing, I want to brew a batch of cider or mead or whatever.
Yeah.
You got, let's just round it, $10 for the bottle, $5 for the yeast, $5 for an airlock. You're at $20. That is good forever.
Yeah.
You dump in, you want to dump in your cider. You have a juicer at home. That's how I made my first one. I bought a crap ton of apples. And I just juiced all my apples and I just dumped it in there. I threw in a Candom tablet
Yeah.
because I wanted to kill off any wild yeast that was on the fruit. But if you buy it in a jug, like just the juice, you can buy tart cherry juice. You can buy pineapple juice, apple juice, as long as it's preservative free.
Yeah, preservative-free frozen juices work
Yep.
really good.
Frozens are great.
I
Frozen
will-
fruits is my favorite too.
Yeah, because they're pasteurized
Yep.
and they're almost always preservative free.
Yep.
The thing that I don't like about fresh fruits, especially apples, is they wax them.
That's
and
true.
That wax.
I always
will ferment.
peel.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
it's
I always
horrible.
peel my apples before I juice them for that very reason.
Yes.
You throw everything together, buy your little airlock, you fill it up. People always like, oh, you can use water and everything else. You know what I always used in mine? Vodka. Because if a little bit spills in, who cares? It's sterile. Nothing. Bacteria doesn't give a crap. When I first started, I didn't have like fancy washes and stuff. Skip told me, he's like, oh, if you want to sanitize your 1 gallon jug, pour you a shot glass of vodka in, put your hand over it, and shake it. Just shake it around, dump it out. It's sterile.
So I've used a lot of Everclear.
Yeah, it's
and-
cheap.
And my first whiskey that I made
Yeah.
was just Everclear. See,
Right.
here's the
Yeah,
thing about,
this is getting into distilling here. This is what I love.
Let's talk about
Yes, please.
legal.
Guys, the whole point is get into home brewing. It is not dangerous. It is a lot of fun. Yes, you're going to screw up, but every time I screwed up my cookies, my grandma still said she was proud of me. Okay, but get into it. Find somebody like this, and if you don't live anywhere nearby, call him.
Yeah.
Look him up on the website, call him,
Can
and
give
he'll
my
answer the
number.
phone and be like, I'll mail you the stuff if you want, or I'll just tell you what you need to do with it. He's that guy. Now, when it comes to distilling, a lot of people don't know this. Every distilled thing in the world essentially starts as Everclear. When you are distilling a spirit, what you are distilling is pure grain alcohol. That's what you're making. Now, whether you use tequila is made from a specific thing, you've got grains vodkas, potato vodkas, there's sugar cane and molasses makes rum, whatever. But what you're making is pure spirit. It comes out at like 190 proof.
Well, 150. It depends
Yeah.
on the runs if people are doing
right?
it.
And then what you do with it from there is what makes it into stuff. So when people talk about like I made my first whiskey, you didn't violate the law. You started with Everclear and you dumped it into a charred barrel, and what comes out of a
absolutely
charred
did,
barrel
yeah.
is bourbon. That's
So-
all you're making. If you take Everclear and you dump it into a charred barrel and you wait 2 years, you have made bourbon.
So how does sorry, go ahead.
No, I just
Or
want to
you
let
can
people know, like,
cut the heck out of this system and just take a 1.75 of Everclear
and put the little stave.
put that in a 2-gallon bucket, and then get
Yeah.
a bunch of the wood chips
Yep.
that have been smoked that we
I have a
happen
bunch
to
of French
sell.
oak chips. Yeah, I bought 'em from
get
you.
those, put them in a bag, a cheesecloth bag,
Yep.
which again we
Like a
sell.
giant tea bag?
Yeah, you put it in there for anywhere from 12 to 48 hours, depending on the intensity that you want. Pull that out, and there's a whiskey.
That's
And then-
what gives whiskey this lovely caramel color.
Yes.
It's just the wood. And over time, as the heat changes, and this, I love your face. Hold on, I got to get your face on this.
Yeah, he's looking at me like I just.
People think that it's some kind of like
Put the moon in
strange. They think it's just like dark art where they do all this stuff. You make pure alcohol and you put it, for it to be considered bourbon, it has to go into a new
Yes.
charred white oak barrel. Those are the 3 requirements. And it has to stay in the barrel for at least 24 months, 2 years,
and
to make it bourbon
Technically,
in the United States.
a bourbon, is specifically a Kentucky bourbon, is going to have at least 50% corn.
Oh, that's true. That's true. It has to be 50% corn. You can add extra corn, which is like
Wait, it has to be 50.
50% corn in the what makes the alcohol.
So
Okay.
You're
so
distilling
So it's
to make the
Everclear made from
Everclear
corn,
from
basically.
at least 50%
let's
corn.
take a step back and talk about the actual brewing process and fermenting process.
Yes.
The first thing to do, you've heard of the term rendering fat.
Yes.
I like to say rendering sugar. You get
Yes.
a source of sugar. And now there's a lot of different ways to get sugar. We've talked about, using grains. If you soak malted grains at
Which
150
a malted grain
degrees
is just a regular grain that's allowed to start to sprout
and then killed.
and then killed by literally heating it and
Yes.
kind of roasting it.
Yes.
And that's the same basic principle that they used to make like Kellogg's Frosted Flakes out of.
Absolutely. In fact, actually, I talked about caramel 40. That's just roasting it longer.
Right,
And
because
so-
they make a 60-minute, 90-minute, 120, and you can look at the grain and it gets darker because like
they have a scale called Lovabond that they measure
Yeah.
the darkness on, and
because the
you-
120 Pinzer malt, I swear, it looks like coffee.
Oh yeah. Well,
It's
I mean, they go all the
delicious
way
to
up
taste
500.
too. We do need to go down to the shop, man. I'm serious. You need to see this.
Honestly, yes, it's almost
Field
a
trip.
field trip.
Field trip.
Yeah.
Well, you got to come back another day when the weather gets nice because we were talking about this. If you're up for it, I would love to have you come back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to open this up. I have my little grain brewer's edge, and we're just going to let you sit here and you two talk, and you're just going to tell me like, hey, it's been X number of minutes. Go throw that yeast in, and we're going to from start to finish show people like, hey, you could brew a beer in an hour and a half
We
or
could
whatever it is.
do so many things. I mean, we could do a cider, we could do a mead, and we could do a beer.
We could do the boucher.
We could do a wine, and we
do
could,
it all,
we could
man.
Throw it all in and show people, and they sit there and they're like, "Well, I don't know how to brew." It's like
From start to
you don't know how to lift the lid off and pour yeast.
There
and
is
put the
so
lid
many
back
people that
loosely.
I've had like, oh, I wish you could do the whole video. And I'm on TikTok. Okay. Nobody wants to watch a 3.5 hour long TikTok.
Yeah, that's not why they're on TikTok.
That's not why they're on TikTok. But the people that watch a podcast like this, they'll be like, hey, that's kind of cool. What do you mean you're going to brew a beer on whatever, Saturday or
Well,
Sunday?
They can stop it and they can
Exactly.
follow the steps.
Be like, hey, this is, and we're not like that day. We're going to try super hard not to cut anything. So that way, if the episode is 3 hours long, it took us 3 hours. And then when we get done, like, hey, this is how when we're done, we cooled it down. Hey, we put it in the fermenter and just show people the steps. We've got the camera. We can pan it over and show it to them while you guys
Do
are
my
talking about stuff.
shortcuts, right? I mean, we
Yes.
could do an extract; it would be much faster.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's where everyone should start.
Yeah.
Because you only skip one step, but it's like the difference between an easy bake oven and full from scratch grandma cookies.
We could do a light.
That would be challenging.
We could do a light, and I could continue to pursue that Japanese lager that I like. So
So you're up for it.
I am.
Okay, good. That's all we needed.
If the viewers would like to see something like that, they need to leave a comment so we
Yes,
know.
absolutely.
Yes.
Let us know
Yes.
what they would like to see us start
After
with
they
too.
subscribe
Yeah.
and visit the Craft Brew Shop website.
Absolutely.
And I'll
And-
put your website in the
We
description
could
and
have
everything
Yes.
like
a
that.
kit pre-made, and they could just say, "I want that kit." That
Yeah, yeah. If we make a batch, we'll say like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Call the shop. He'll have all the ingredients. If you want to brew the same beer, you could literally watch the TikTok. You could watch the YouTube video with us. And when we say we're pitching those hops, that's the kit. Just open your pack and dump it in. That would be so much fun.
I'd be up
and
for
then we'll have to
multiple.
have a tasting day.
Oh, yeah, because
yeah,
you got
of
to
course.
ferment it and come back and taste it. Oh, that'd be so much fun.
So the viewers can make it at the same time.
Yeah.
And then when we have our tasting day,
Because
they
it'll
can
take
taste
a
too.
couple of weeks. Then you come back and
We
taste
could-
it later.
We could give them a quarter. We could give them 3 months or so to
Yeah,
to
because it'll take
get
them a little time to
caught up.
get with it.
Sounds fun.
It's so much fun. And you've never done, well, you did the Mr. Beers, which are
Yeah.
extract kits.
Yes.
But it's honestly, I hate to say that I cheat and do extracts, but I cheat because it's more replicable.
Oh, I'll
Like-
tell you right now, I'm going to do some things to shortcut it that a lot of people would
Yeah.
look at and absolutely go, "There's no way you should do it," and I might screw it up. It might be a fall flat on my face thing, and you know what?
Then we'll tell people like, hey, we made a mistake and this is what we're going to do with it.
Absolutely.
Then we're going to
They
marinate
finally-
some meat with
They
it.
finally get to be insulting in a just way.
Oh, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Let the gatekeepers and haters, they just drive the algorithm.
Keyboard warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but back
The
to
internet
the
tough guy.
distilling side of it.
Yes.
So you can make your own whiskeys and bourbon.
Yes, you can. If you start with a product that has
Exactly.
been professionally and legally distilled at another location like Everclear.
Now, can you explain to people? I know, I think Justin knows. What is the difference between brewing and distilling? Because in both cases, you are making alcohol. But why does the Uncle Sam say, hey guys, you can't do this?
There's 3 arguments that the feds have brought into the law and the prohibition of distillations. What they said is, number 1, health issues. They're like, it is
You can
potentially-
actually harm yourself with distilling.
You can
We
blow
do
up.
we do need to say that.
You are taking a
Highly
flammable
volatile chemical. Yeah.
and you are deliberately concentrating it, sometimes under pressure,
To a combustible
with
degree.
heat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So doing this with an open flame in particular can be very dangerous. It's like smoking and filling your lawnmower. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
You know,
There's a reason why you can't smoke while pumping gas in America.
It ends badly.
Yeah.
You can. It
Every
just-
once in
You
a
can
while,
do it
ends
once.
badly.
You can do anything once. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and you know, you never know. You might win a Darwin Award on this one. So, the second reason they're concerned is, remember when I talked about those offs? Well, if you don't get your offs out correctly, you could create a considerable amount of methanol. Things that are fermented, especially when the yeast is allowed to just run away, they often
To that very high alcohol
they
range.
often produce. Remember, I talked about those phenols. Well, it's not the only thing they're producing. Sometimes they're producing methanol and fusel alcohols.
I'm sorry. I
I'm
keep
sorry.
coughing.
Should I say that again?
No,
So that-
I'm sorry. My allergies, my asthma has been acting up tonight.
So it is possible that you will get fusel alcohols, methanols produced in the process of fermentation. And the bad thing about that is we're going to concentrate all of that in distillations. So if that isn't thrown out, people will say, well, you throw out the heads. And then a lot of people, they sit there and go, well, I threw out the first jar and that should take care of the heads.
It all depends on
Not
temperatures.
necessarily. It's not that cut and dry. It's not that easy, and it's not that straightforward.
Isn't that a reason why they used to associate blindness
Yes.
with drinking? Like,
Methanol makes a really great NASCAR fuel that will cause blindness. Yes.
wow.
You know what the treatment is for methanol poisoning? This is really interesting.
I don't know.
No, you're gonna love this.
Drinking charcoal.
No. So I worked on an ambulance. I worked on the ER.
Yeah.
If it happens, people come in, they're like, I was making moonshine and XYZ. Okay. Do you know what we give you?
Activated charcoal.
Nope, won't work. It's gonna blow your mind. Alcohol.
I'm not shocked on that one.
The way for your body to pass methanol
Is
is to
to bond
drink
it.
alcohol because methanol bonds to alcohol and passes through
What
your
kind of
system
alcohol
harmlessly.
do they give you?
Vodka. Well, no, it's medical.
Medical
alcohol. They
vodka,
actually give it
okay.
to you in your IV. Like, I mean, it's yeah.
Whoa.
Apparently, it's like the greatest drunk you've ever been in your life because it's like medically induced.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, so it bonds the methanol to the alcohol and passes harmlessly through your body.
So great, it kind of
crazy.
offsets the whole being blind thing, I guess.
Well, so the joke was with if you accidentally drink too much. So the heads is what comes out 1st. The tails is what comes out last.
Yes.
Those two can tend to have methanol. What you're trying to get is the heart.
The tails have a lot of disgusting flavors that are in them. Hopefully, the methanol at that point in time is all gone because methanol evaporates at a lower temperature than ethanol.
Which is why it comes out first.
Yeah, you're going to cut off all of the acetones and the methanols.
Which I've heard an old timer telling me is the best fire starter ever when he was making
it's
moonshine.
A really great engine degreaser.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, we never threw away the heads. We just put it in a mason jar and you put some cotton balls in there. And
I remember being in college
yeah,
and
You can remember
military.
that, huh?
Well, parts of it.
Absolutely.
But drinking like the Everclear and the vodka and stuff, we had like the huge bonfires and you just spit it onto
Oh,
the
yeah.
fire and like,
oh yeah,
like, man, that's so cool. I'm drinking that. I'm so tough.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, let's not. All alcohol is poison.
It is.
All alcohol is poison. There's no like people say, oh, a little bit's not bad for you. No, all alcohol is poison. It's how much your body can tolerate.
That euphoria, that's your brain dying.
Yeah. It's like the buffalo theory, though, right?
Yeah.
You've heard the buffalo theory?
No.
You've never heard this? Okay, so
Don't pet them.
no. All right, so like a herd of buffalo out on the empty plains, right?
Oh, I think
Right,
I have.
and then along comes the Native Americans or the coyotes, and they chase the herd. Which ones do they get? They get the slower, weaker, older buffalo at the back of the herd. Because a buffalo herd is only as fast as its slowest member. They won't leave someone behind. They will trail to the back. But as the slower and weaker and older die off, the herd itself actually gets faster and harder to kill. So, as I've always said, I'm not
That's why they're
killing brain cells. I'm making the herd healthier and stronger. It's the slower, weaker brain cells at the back of the herd that's getting attacked first. That's from an old episode of Cheers, like way back in there. The guy had a whole. Go on YouTube, check out
Cheers, yeah.
Buffalo Theory alcohol drinking. It's a beautiful analogy.
Is
know,
this,
there-
Cliff Clavin?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
There are tribes that just gave up with that whole process and they just run them off cliffs though.
I was
Yeah.
going to say that. Yes, absolutely.
I think that's what Everclear is. You're not chasing. Yeah, you're not chasing brain cells.
Yeah.
It's not the young bull, old bull story. No.
It's
Sounds like a
terrible.
load of bull.
Yeah. But so back. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like sidebar the entire distilling process there with my Buffalo Theory. But so when you're doing the three reasons,
Yeah.
health and safety.
Yes. And then the other one was loss of tax revenue,
Right.
and then the right to regulate interstate commerce.
Which is the taxes between states.
So there's been a recent development.
Yeah,
in
this is really interesting.
in the last week as we're sitting here. What is it?
This is July.
I think it happened on like July 10th or July 11th. By the way, the club that filed this was in
I
Keller.
didn't even know there was there's a home distillers club in Texas.
Yes.
Wow.
Which I'm like, talk about rebels.
And
Yeah.
somebody got a
Cease and desist letter.
actually they got a tax bill sent to them from the TTP.
Yeah, the Texas
or
Trade Bureau.
TTP.
Oh, they thought they were
Texas
being cute.
it's like a part of the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, but it's their taxes and trades bureau division.
I think the ATF is actually the legal enforcement side of it.
okay.
This is the actual commerce regulation.
Yeah, it's TTB. I think it's
executive,
Tax and Trade
or
Bureau.
legislative wing. So they sent them a bill and said, you've screwed the government out of this much tax revenue. And so
Pay
the
up or go to jail.
The club actually took the government to court. And
This is what's fascinating. I love the legal loophole that they've discovered in this.
they actually argued that the health discussion, because the way that the law, which is 150 plus years old, is written, it just basically said, we're protecting the public health with this.
I have a story about that when you get
They
around to it.
didn't describe how.
Right.
They didn't describe anything better than this is just done for the public health. And because they were so vague and nebulous, the argument isn't there.
It's not enforceable
It's
because you
not-
didn't actually make a
'cause
point.
You didn't tell anyone what you were going to do. You just told them you were
From
trying
up
to do
here,
it.
you all look like little ants. Listen,
Yes, and so the next thing was they said, well, we're missing tax dollars. And they went, we're not selling anything, so you have no commerce to tax.
which was the argument that they used to legislate and allow home brewing of beer and wine, was because for me, I brew a lot. I can give it to you to drink. I can give it to you to drink. We're friends.
Yeah.
Here you go.
What you're selling, it's a whole different
I
thing.
cannot sell it, or I have now defrauded the government from
That was the
taxes.
corollary to it was
Exactly.
the inconsistency, because you are allowed at a federal level, you are allowed to brew 250 gallons of beer.
Which is a lot. Have you gotten close before?
Not according to my log.
Don't they cut that
I
part?
love that. 249.9 gallons on December 31st at 11:59 p.m.
99999.
Pull them in check.
I love it. I love it.
Second thing is what they were talking about the inconsistency. They were also talking about. I heard an argument from an attorney. By the way, before we continue,
This is not
I
legal
am
advice?
Not an attorney. I am not telling you that legally you can get away with distilling at this point in time. I'm going to say that we're in this early argument of if we
are
want to
three
make
guys in the garage that would love to one day do this, and we're watching to see if anyone goes to jail before we try.
I just love
government-
seeing people get freedom.
Yeah, well, our government's in this great discussion right now as to whether this should be one of our freedoms.
Well, and not to jump ahead in the story, but basically the loophole was, I say loophole, it was, hey, you never made your case for why it's actually dangerous. You never told us exactly why. You just said it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So's driving, so's everything else. So unless you tell me why,
And what you're going to do and how you're going to
Exactly.
to handle it.
you said I'm defrauding you of tax revenue, but I haven't sold anything, so there is no taxation on what I own. If I grow vegetables in my backyard, I don't pay taxes. If I sell them at a farmer's market, now I'm a business and I'm supposed to pay taxes. That's just the way it is. And then the third thing was
Bootlegging.
Bootlegging.
They said that you're transporting things over state lines.
or even just county lines in Texas,
And-
because that's
and-
technically
and that-
defined.
And that is changing the way that things are distributed, but specifically
Good
it's
old
the
Dukes of
federal-
Hazzard, like.
It's the federal government that was complaining, so county lines wouldn't work. You
Gotcha.
actually have to go over a state line. And they're-
Interstate commerce.
Yeah, and they're saying they're going, no, we never left the state.
Because there is a definitive line between intrastate and interstate.
Right, and I know for those
It's the same
people-
debate they're using right now with like the suppressor law in Texas.
Yeah.
That things that are manufactured and stay within the state are the state's issue. And they're kind of using that similar thing with if we make the alcohol here and we don't ship it out, it's not really under their purview.
But really, don't protect me from myself.
Well, and
protect me
that's-
from external threats. That's your
sort of
job.
what the,
Right.
the government has been doing for 150 years in
Yeah.
the case of distilling, and that's exactly what the judge saw. So the judge said
And not just a judge anywhere.
it is actually it was a district federal judge
In
and
Texas.
So the next step up is I think a regional appellate.
Right.
And
a three panel.
yeah, and the feds have to appeal.
And they only have like 14 days to file the appeal.
We're halfway through it. And I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know
been
if they've
7
done it
days,
yet.
and I looked today. It's been 7 days.
He's been researching.
Oh, I did, because you sent me this thing a couple days ago. I'm like, how haven't I heard about this?
You know they can get an injunction or a
So
stay or something,
normally
or
when
they
a
can't-
judge files
not
this and
attorney.
says, hey guys, I'm going to strike this down, it is now legal. California does this all the time. Some district judge says, hey, the ban on 30-round magazines is no longer good. And everybody goes out and buys them like crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's free now. And then they appeal and they go, okay, now we're going to put an injunction. Now you can't buy them anymore. And then we're going to pending the case. So in Texas, what happened is he came out and he said, I'm going to rule that this should not be the case. However, I'm going to give you 14 days to file your appeal before everybody just goes out and starts distilling.
Right.
And so we're 7 days into what I'm calling the glorious waiting period.
I'm sure there's going to be an 11th hour.
I'm sure.
Call on this
I'm
one.
sure.
Because the
There always
feds
is.
don't want to lose this. And ultimately, this is about, I think, protecting the existing legal distilleries and their.
I was
their
wondering how much
existing-
lobbying is going to be done in the next 2 weeks of just distillers in general.
How much did home brewing, as far as beer goes, affect the beer companies?
You may tell you what it affected?
Yeah, please.
It gave us craft brewing. Like, I want you to understand, if anything, I don't want to say that it hurt the big breweries, because over the last 20 years, every time somebody rises to a level, one of them gets bought. Sam Adams, one of the most successful home brewers of my lifetime, just sold. Now they're owned by someone, I forget, Dogfish Head.
Tell me
They
it's
just
not
sold.
Ambev.
I think it is InBev. I think it is. Revolver from right up the road here in Grandview, Cleburne.
Anheuser-Busch.
They got bought by Coors Light. So yes, it's creating competition. I will give them that. But competition breeds more competition. It also is the reason why over the last 10 years, we didn't just have Budweiser. We had Budweiser Copper Lager. We had Budweiser Platinum. It
So-
makes them have competition
guys-
is what makes the market.
The guys that
thrive.
are like, Bud Light's my go-to, it's probably still their go-to.
Bud Light will always be here.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many
Same thing
craft
like
breweries are formed.
Jim Beam or
Do you know how many people look at my soda and they say, "Is that Coke?"
No.
It's like, no, it's not.
And it doesn't matter how good it is,
Absolutely
it will
not.
never rival Coca-Cola
Well, Yeah.
from a market share perspective.
What do you do how do you, as a gas station, for example, sell to somebody who says, "I only buy Shell"?
Right. But at the same time, there was a guy in Texas who sat around looking at every 7-Eleven and Shell and Exxon and all these massive companies and said, hey, I'm going to put a beaver on my sign and I'm going to open the largest gas stations ever. And did Shell close? Did Exxon close? Did
chase off
7-Eleven
trucks
close?
and make all sorts of questionably moral references on
Oh,
billboards.
yes. Oh, yes. I'm not, we're not going down the path on that. I just mean, like, people complain that, like, oh, the what they're going to say is that the competition is bad for the consumer. The answer is competition is never bad for the consumer in any market.
Isn't it kind of against the whole principle of capitalism?
Well, hold on.
no.
But capitalism would denote sale. And so this is where I'm hoping that this argument fails, because these people are not asking for the right to start their own distilleries.
No.
So it's not competition in the marketplace. And I think that's why that this appellate judge in Texas was like, hey, I'm going to give you guys 14 days to make a case here, because if you guys come back with the whole, well, it's about taxes, it's about consumers, it's about, no one's asking to sell. We're just asking for 3 or 4 guys to be able to get together in their backyard and maybe blow themselves up.
Without
Right? Because, like,
Which we
which we really hope doesn't happen.
we
But
have M80s, so how much is the government trying to stop us from
But
doing
you know
that?
what? Like, even that
We
annoys
can
me,
get-
because in Texas, you can only buy fireworks like 5 days of the year.
I mean, I can go out right now and buy a whole crap ton of gunpowder.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
can
yeah.
go out and get a bunch of fertilizer,
Tannerite and stuff, and oh yeah,
Yeah.
you can,
Yeah.
and all of that stuff takes time, and all that time it takes a little bit of got to go through the process.
Yeah.
But now we have it all.
yeah.
So one of the more creative arguments I heard, one attorney, he was actually an attorney, stated, he goes, look, coffee pots do not steal from Starbucks. But
true.
Just because somebody's making coffee at home does not mean that the federal government lost tax revenue at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Because they're still buying the coffee.
Well, it's not even about,
Well-
because it's not about that. It's about private. My tomatoes I grow in my backyard do not take money away from Trader Joe's.
They'll still buy.
true.
They'll still buy sugars and
Still got to buy
grain
everything to
from
make
me,
it. Yeah.
You know,
I still got to buy all the fertilizer.
Still get
I still got to
tax
buy the
revenue.
seeds.
I pay tax on things that people
Yeah.
buy from us, unless it's a food item. You know,
Right.
So-
Right. Yeah. It's really an interesting
And we
argument to
don't
see how they're
tax
going to go with
coffee
it.
anyway. I literally looked that up because
Really?
yeah, we don't tax coffee. Or
I didn't
tea.
know that.
Did I know that? Oh, he didn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a little war over that. Right? Yeah.
Never taxing that again.
So-
Tax everything else 2 or
Yeah.
3 times.
You ever look at there was like an AI model for the death of society?
Yeah.
and apparently it triggers 2040 to 2045 like every time. And they asked one scientist, well, why? And he said, he goes, World War, climate change, financial collapse, food collapse, societal collapse, pollution, accidents,
Plague.
He said, yeah, plague. He said, take your pick. Because
We're overdue for all of it.
What happens is one always wins up. And you know what? One of the worst things, and this is something that's good for the recording here. One of the worst things that we have to deal with as a society is business as usual. It's also one of the most comfortable things for people to establish, right? Because we're back to that consistency, and everyone wants that consistency. Well, what if the consistency is a road to hell? And so,
Just following the guy in front of you.
yeah, exactly.
Going to hell.
We're essentially following the buffalo in front of us off the cliff.
And that's how the podcast comes full circle.
So yeah,
I won't cut that part.
that's exactly why you leave the mics on during a break, right?
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And,
Well,
and
last
so-
time he had to go to the bathroom, and then me and the other guy just kept talking. I don't know if you used any of that or not, but it's like just in case,
And so I think that's why it's good to have this change in this law. And it's good to just question laws that are 150 years old, just as a general principle. Do we really need to legislate that everyone must take a bath once a year? Because the truth of the matter is, I don't think it's been probably years since I took a bath. I shower daily, but is that considered a bath?
right.
So there's all sorts of really bad things still on the books. I think, Texas was talking about, oral performances of things. I remember having that argument at one
Yeah,
time.
no, that was on the books.
Apparently, yeah.
That was illegal in the state of
Don't
Texas.
go down. Don't get caught going down on somebody.
Yeah.
Because there you go.
Even as a married couple, that was a felony in the state of Texas.
Well, it's like if you look at old pictures of
No
beaches.
wonder we used to be a blue state.
Yeah.
If you look at old,
Parts were blue.
if you look at pictures from the beaches in like 60s and 70s, there wasn't really a whole lot of obesity. Like people were pretty
Oh,
fit.
yeah.
And then around that time, they're like, "Hey, saturated fats are really bad for you. Stay away from eggs.
food
Stay away
pyramid.
from butter." Yeah, the food pyramid came
They
about.
started monkeying with the food supply, and yeah, we've probably damned ourselves when it comes to you talk about seeds. I've been told there's certain seeds that you can grow them out, and if you do try to replant them, they just won't grow.
Yeah. Well, and now that's if you even grow a fruit that has seeds anymore. Everything is seedless. Like, I'm sorry. Wait a second. The whole point to growing watermelons when I was a kid is that you spit them all in a mason jar, and that's what we replanted next year. And we had watermelons next year. I mean, like, that's what we did.
Yeah,
We
now-
didn't buy
now that's a
seeds every
crime,
year.
right? So
Well, it's not a crime. Well, yeah, it's not necessarily a crime, but it's like your watermelon seeds, if there's even any seeds, they won't grow.
Well, the issue is you only sell them once at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we say seedless like it's a sure. We like seedless watermelons. We prefer that.
I do too. Yep.
My kids prefer that, but really, that's not the reason they make seedless watermelons. It's because they don't want you to plant more watermelons. And
You want
grow
to see
your own.
something really crazy?
No, I don't. I
No,
don't see
this-
anything. I want you. I don't want you to blow my mind.
Show you. I like art. I'm an art. I'm by no means an expert, but I enjoy art. I'm not a big modern art fan, but like when I went to Europe, I went to a lot of art museums. My family has memberships at the Monet, not the Monet, the God, I can't even think it. Mona, that's up here in Fort Worth, and the Dallas Museum of Art. And I enjoy art. I can appreciate it. I don't know enough about it, but I look at it and go, wow, that's beautiful. And I enjoy that.
well, you know what you like.
I know what I like. Exactly. My wife, when we were dating, we went up to the Monet exhibit. That's why I get it wrong. The Monet exhibit. And she's like, I don't know anything about art. I'm like, honey, it's fine. Like, we're just going to have fun.
Have you ever gotten really close to one of the Monet?
And she had never. She had never.
I mean,
They had them like on display. And she's like,
painted
there's
like
no
4 inches off the
Yes.
canvas.
And there's no ropes. I mean, this was like $100 million piece of artwork, and it's literally like 3 feet away. And we're walking through, and she went through the day, and I'm looking at it, I'm staring at it. She's like super quiet, which is not really like her. And we're walking, and I'm standing at one, I'm reading the little plaque, and I'm looking at it, and I walk by. And I go to the next one, stand there, and I walk off, and I get to the next one, and I realize she hasn't followed me, right? And I look back over, and she's just sitting there, just staring at it. And so I walked back over, and I just stood there, very silently. And she stood there for a good couple of more minutes before like even acknowledging me. And I didn't speak. And she goes, I like this one. And I told her, I said, welcome to art. She's like, well, what is it about it? I said, it doesn't matter. We just spent the day and you found something, like you have a connection to that. But talking about it, have you ever seen Renaissance paintings of watermelons?
Can't say I have.
They're hideous. Because that's what a watermelon looked like. But due to selective breeding, we got rid of all the white rind and seeds, and now it's all meat.
Well, have you ever seen
So like I like to tell people, like, this is the difference between a Renaissance watermelon and today. Eggplants. Do you know why eggplants are called eggplants?
Tiny and egg shape.
They don't look like they do now.
Bananas
they
in a
grew
wild.
little white, meaty vegetables in the shape of an egg.
Yeah.
And through selective breeding, we made them bigger and bigger until they turned purple. And now we have purple eggplant that nobody understands why it's
And
called
they're
eggplant.
disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're disgusting. I'll
But
give you
bananas
that.
in the wild, like if you see them growing off trees that aren't genetically modified, it's mostly seed. And they're big old seeds. There's very little banana meat, and it's mostly seed.
I'm going to find a
I'm going to
picture.
defend eggplant when it's
Anybody want some
done
brownies,
right.
by the way?
It's
Oh, I'm good. I'm good right now.
no, I'm good. Thank you.
No, get.
Well, I mean, you're probably the thinnest out of all of us, so you go right ahead.
So this is an heirloom seed variety of Italian eggplant. Now you see why it would have the name eggplant. But I just think that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. I'm like, we like you said. Now, granted, we domesticated corn,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. We needed it. Civilization needed it.
Yeah.
Great. But there's a difference between selective breeding and what. Let me put it this way. I love that we have the variety of dogs that we have. Selective breeding. I don't want people like genetically modifying my corgi. You know what I mean? Like that's when I'm like,
making Ein from Cowboy Bebop.
yeah, like that's when you've. I can't get on board with that.
Yeah.
We were talking about
we
before.
could talk about anime sometime too. That would be
I can't do it, man.
really.
I can't. My daughters are both really into it.
Yeah. You've tried like Avatar.
Yeah, can't do it. I can't even watch Clone Wars.
Really?
I don't know. Here's the funny. I grew up watching cartoons, loved cartoons, but like even like when my kids were growing up, when they were little and they were like, "Oh, let's watch cartoons," I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't sit through it.
One
so
Punch Man.
I couldn't do it. So you know what I made them watch all the time? We watched the live action Thomas the Trains because like I'm like, okay, this is fun. Like I'll watch this with you. Blue's Clues was about the only other thing I could tolerate, and that's just because it was like, I don't know, maybe it's just over quickly
So
enough.
they did live action Avatar, Cowboy Bebop, and One Piece. So
I did. Okay, I started watching the live action One Piece with my daughter.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is cool. And she's like, this is stupid. It's not like the show at all. And I was like, oh.
well, I mean,
Then I wasn't going to watch it without her because I'm like, I don't really care.
honestly, you do want to because they go through the first season essentially,
Okay.
and Nami is one of the characters, and she has like the worst backstory out of any anime. In fact, the real cartoon just sort of alludes to,
Yeah.
but doesn't cover everything. You
Okay.
know, there was various assaults on this
Okay.
girl at 12.
Okay.
And it's almost hard to she was forced to work for the people that killed her mom.
I
gang,
can't. You like
you know?
animes, right? We were talking about this before. You like anime?
Yeah, I like anime.
I can't get into
You
it.
watch anime?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's what he's saying. We could sit here and talk about anime for the rest of the night. I'm like, you guys have fun. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just like,
I was just talking about he was watching the live action One Piece, and it was like Nami has like the worst backstory out of any anime character
In the live action? Or
in the regular cartoon. I mean, the regular anime.
I'm not too far into the anime. I'm only on like episode 1,000 or something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but Nami, she was 12, right? They allude to her being assaulted. You know, her mom was killed in front of her. She was forced to work for the guy that killed her mom, and she had her entire town with her sister in it held hostage, and she was told that she had to steal, you know, an absurd amount of money, or else they were just going to kill everyone in the town, and it was all her fault.
I think you just need to bite the bullet and watch some anime.
Honestly,
I watched Initial D. That's the only anime I watched.
You need to watch like Cowboy Bebop or
No.
I
something
love
that's short and sweet. Cowboy Bebop's like a classic. Did you watch
Yeah,
that?
absolutely love it.
Trigun. Trigun's good.
Hated Trigun.
The original or the remake or both?
You know, just the concept of Vosh. Just
Oh, yeah?
you know, it's like I had to force myself to get through Attack on Titan.
Oh, really?
And then about third season, I had one of my students was like, he was like, "So what do you think?" And the funny thing is, I sat him down and was like, "Well, this is what I think's happening," and I basically laid out the entire thing.
I never watched all of Attack on Titan. I watched what was out at the time, probably like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I never really got back into it. Now, I don't mind gore, but it's just so over the top. I just like,
I don't like it when something breaks its own physics. And I felt like with the whole transforming into the Titans that broke its own physics, and I just sort of stopped right there. And I got to admit, I unjustly didn't give it a second chance. I didn't let it develop and say that, oh, there is a reason, there is a justification. No, he's not the only one that's doing it. One Punch Man.
Oh, I love One Punch Man.
If you don't like anime,
One Punch Man is so
you
good.
My kids watch it.
You might like One Punch Man season
It's
1.
so good, dude.
Just season
I
one.
Even
love-
season 2 is not bad.
I love Star Wars, and I can't even watch the Clone Wars
Really?
because it's just too cartoony.
We're snobs.
Yeah, but I don't know, man.
But
Like,
the thing with One Punch is it's meant to be. It's
I know,
meant
and
to be
I'm-
absolutely freaking stupid.
my kids try to tell me like, "Hey, Dad, you should watch this. You'd like it." I'm like, oh.
Okay, Invincible.
I just finished watching the last season of Invincible. It's not anime. It's animated. It's really good.
Yeah,
It's a cartoon.
it's a cartoon.
It's a cartoon, man. I don't.
Anything
Hey,
is
I'm
cartoon.
But you know
I
what?
also like I'm getting that way now. Like I can't go watch like
He's the only person I've ever thought of that would see hentai and go, nope.
So we actually brought up a lot of these stuff we're talking about in the last one of our previous episodes.
I don't think we talked about hentai in the last
no.
episode.
But we were talking about Captain Marvel and how broken she was. It's like she's not that she's overpowered; it's just she's badly written. Because you have shows like
X-Men.
yeah,
X-Men.
I loved all the live action stuff. Okay, now I watched cartoons as a kid. I'm not saying I never liked cartoons.
It's been 97 is
DuckTales, Darkwing Duck. Like I loved all of that stuff.
Darkwing Duck.
I love that show. But like, no, I'm just.
I tried going back to it, and I was like, what the hell did I see in this?
I can't watch it. I used to love Darkwing Duck. Then try rewatching it. I can't get past the first episode. I was like, this is just stupid.
But you know which one I could watch when I went back?
Goof Troop.
The Ghostbusters one.
Oh really?
Yeah, I actually
Teenage
liked those.
Mutant Ninja Turtles.
It
It's not the same.
unnerved me then. It unnerved
Really?
me now.
I like that. I like that one.
Same thing with old games. Like I had the Switch Pass.
Yeah.
And like I grew up like playing SNES and 64 stuff, and my kids like it, so I'll play it with them. But like GoldenEye and stuff,
Yeah.
I was raised on GoldenEye.
Yeah,
98,
yeah.
99, 2000.
Yeah.
Now I'll go back and play. It's like
It's
even games,
hard though. It's
even
hard
games.
now. Going back to that because the controls are different.
The controls are very different.
They brought it back on the Xbox, and so I got to play GoldenEye on my Xbox with my Xbox controller. Well, the controls are mapped to Xbox.
Yeah.
My poor kids didn't know what happened. They're like, "Dad, how are you doing that?" I'm like, I'm living it up.
I still try to play it like it's Halo. Like I try to like look up and down like it's Halo and stuff. It's like nah, I just can't.
I need to try and I could do MMOs, and I used keyboards. I was really good at using the keyboard.
Same.
Yeah.
You know, so-
WASD, man. That I grew up playing PC games because we couldn't afford a game console. But back then, PC games ran on a PC.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have a gaming PC. It was a PC game. So we couldn't afford a console because back in the day, I mean, an NES Nintendo was like $200. It was a lot of money. But my brothers and I could scrape together $20 and get a PC game. My dad went to this thing up in the Metroplex called First Saturday. If you've ever heard of it. I don't even know if they still do it. It's the first Saturday of every month. It was a giant computer nerd garage sale. It was a huge empty parking lot. We're talking like the 90s. And we'd go up there and Dad would walk through and guys would have like cardboard boxes full of like parts and pieces all the way back to like Tandys and Osbornes. And like my first computer I played around with was an Osborne. The one that came in a suitcase, it weighed more than like a mini fridge, and the bottom folded down. Screen was this big, and it was 2 colors,
It was a C64.
on or green, or off or green. That was it, like
Sounds
little
like
green
Fallout,
line.
like old.
Oh, dude, and it had like the floppy disk, like
remember
the old
those.
5 1/4 floppies. I remember when zip drives came out,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and all of us were like, I remember my dad coming home with a Circuit City ad. He was like, "Hey boys, one day this will be the next big thing," and he slapped it down. I'll never forget this ad. It was for I think it was 4X, read and write CD burner
Yeah. There you
for
go.
$9.99.99.
Truly
And
living in
the
the future.
Discs were $4 each. And I was like, oh my God.
I
And
remember-
nowadays, like nothing even has a drive anymore.
I remember
like,
in elementary school, it was a big deal when we got DVD players in elementary school.
Yeah.
You know, like the teachers would get out the DVDs.
VCR
and they were like
and
the
the little
size
cart.
of records.
yeah.
They
oh,
were
no.
massive.
Those are laser
Those are
discs.
Laser discs.
Laser
Okay.
discs. Which, if you want to be like a big audiophile, they are way better than DVDs ever were. Like, so
I remember that. I remember, like, man, science classes have not been the same since they went to DVD. Like, the audio is just trash
you
now.
remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he's mocking me. So here's one of my little funny things. Everything that we have from a technological standpoint is all defined by one industry, and most people don't know this. But like back in the day when we had VCRs, this was pre my time. You might remember this. Before we had VCRs, we had VCRs and
Beta.
Yeah, beta.
Betamax. Why did VCRs become a thing?
I think the video rental, they
It
really
wasn't
just,
a video rental. It was a very specific industry that produced a lot of tapes, and they decided to side.
porn. Yeah.
The porn industry said, we're going to produce solely on VCR cassettes.
Same with streaming.
Well, hold on, wait.
Really?
So now fast forward a few years. We had laser discs and CDs.
Yeah.
DVDs, excuse me. Why did DVDs win?
See, this
Because
is
Because it's harder to see these nuts.
Because it was easier to mail a disc this big to someone
yeah.
than this big. Then we fast forward a few more years. We had Blu-ray and HD DVD.
yeah.
Guess which one the industry went with?
Well, and that
and
one-
now I'm with you. Now everything's just streaming. It's like, no, we don't need any of this stuff.
But I
anymore.
remember
HD
when
DVD was Sony shooting themselves in the foot. Really?
No, Sony was Blu-ray.
Was it? Okay.
Microsoft had the HD
was
DVD because they tried to
DVD.
push that
was
with
them
the
shooting
Xbox.
themselves
You had
in
to
the
get the
foot.
second little drive.
So interesting fact about like
I just love
like,
that story. Sorry.
If you look at the 90s, you might care about this, you might not.
I love this kind
But
of stuff.
the Final Fantasy Squaresoft was almost exclusively Nintendo. And Final Fantasy
know that.
Final Fantasy was a big deal for Nintendo. And Final Fantasy VII, which was at the time and probably still is probably one of the most
played
famous
games
Final
ever.
Fantasies.
Was that the first one on PlayStation?
Hold on, slow your roll.
No, 'cause
slow your roll.
I had it on PlayStation. It was the first one I ever played.
And here's why: because they wanted to
Wow.
use the cutscenes, like it wasn't live actually, but like the.
I know what you mean. Yeah, the rendered cutscenes.
When Nintendo decided, hey, we're gonna go because this was Nintendo 64 was out,
cassettes.
and PlayStation was out,
Right.
and when Nintendo decided, hey, we're not going to do CDs, we're going to go with cassettes,
And it was only
for
64
security
megabyte.
for security purposes.
Right.
PlayStation was 64.
Well, right, but it was more. No, it was bigger.
No,
There was only
That was the
64 megabytes on a
64-bit
CD.
that was a 64 megabyte era.
Really?
It went 12.
So PS1, like the old school gray
You
PlayStation.
had 12 byte, which was Atari. 24 was
No,
Nintendo.
No, Atari was 8
I
bit.
think
Okay, 8, 16.
NES was 8. Sega was 16.
16.
'Cause that's why it was the Sega 16.
So
think
SNES was
the
16.
original PlayStation was a 32-bit.
Maybe
I think
was it
that
32?
was because that's why I think they went with it because it was a little bit bigger.
Okay.
But the N64, it wasn't just they were limited in because it's not just 64-bit architecture. It's
There's
also
the type of memory
how
associated
much
with the
memory
cartridge.
it has.
Yeah.
It's
And
limited.
so they couldn't play videos and stuff like that, which is why it was at that point SquareSoft's like, you know what, we're going to flip over to PlayStation.
That's incredible.
And they have never released a Nintendo exclusive, aside from like a few like
I didn't
Nintendo
even know
Wii
that.
things.
I would have said if that was a millionaire show question for $1 million. They said Final Fantasy has always been on what game system?
that's
final answer: PlayStation.
That's when Nintendo lost.
Wow.
What's crazy is like they had some like Super Mario RPG, all the SNES Final Fantasy games, like Secret of Evermore, Secret of Mana.
Zelda.
Well, Zelda's Nintendo. Zelda's owned by Nintendo.
Right.
But like I'm talking about like these
the ones that
SquareSoft
jumped
RPGs. It all shifted at that point to PlayStation.
I think it's really a shame that Microsoft has thrown in the towel now. I get why they have, but
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
so Microsoft announced the fridge, the Series X that I have,
Yeah, I got one of those.
the last console they'll ever make. That's it.
They've been struggling on consoles.
They've been struggling, and it's because we've finally hit that was it Moore's law or whatever? Every 18 months, the processor doubles in speed, and they're like, "Hey, we're producing games that are outreaching. We're having to make a game for old systems, or we're gonna have to come out with a new system every year." And the people who buy consoles aren't for that. Now, if you're a PC
here's
gamer,
the-
you're buying a new system every 12 months.
Here's the thing about consoles. Consoles were never about profit.
You don't think so?
No, consoles were about
merchandise.
no. You got to get it. People cannot play an Xbox game unless they have an Xbox console.
It was about exclusivity.
It was about exclusivity, which is also why they did away with the backwards compatibility.
Right.
Like
That's why only recently crossplay is even a
like
thing.
the Xboxes we have, you could play all the older stuff. PS2 would play PS1 games.
My
but they did
my
away with all
PlayStation
that.
3 that's sitting up there, the reason why it's not even plugged in, that is an original release PS3. I spent a lot of money to find that, and then had to have it taken apart and have like new whatever it is, the cooling stuff put on for the GPU and all that stuff to extend its life. That is the only PS3 made that is PS3, PS2, and PS1 compatible. Later, when they went to the Slim and the Pro and all those others, then it's a whole nother system. It's not backwards compatible anymore.
But when they
And
say-
that's why I have it, because my 5 will do 5 and 4 games,
Yeah.
and that will do 3, 2, and 1 game. So between those two consoles, I can play every PlayStation
But
game. I
whenever
ever
they
owned.
say, "Hey, we're not including backwards compatibility because we want it to be
shot
a
themselves in the
small,"
foot.
they want to keep it slim and no bull crap, dude. You could fit.
You want me to
can
buy new
download an
games?
emulator and like
Yeah.
if you get on Switch and get like the online Switch
Yeah.
and you download all the new Nintendo games, it's like it's like it downloads that fast.
You
It's
really
not
need to-
because it's that much memory. It's because you want to resell us the games. That's why
you
it's
really need to play on my arcade that's in my kids' room.
Yeah,
I took
I need to get one of those.
I took a Raspberry Pi, which I was a nerd back in the day. Like I said, my dad.
was.
I don't really do that
How many
kind of
times have we
stuff
talked about
anymore.
Star Wars on here?
Well, no, like I don't really do that kind of stuff anymore. Like this is gonna sound like I'm
Pretentious.
I
Yeah, you are.
finally have adult money, so I don't have to like redneck engineer stuff the way I used to, right? Like my first computer, I couldn't play the games I wanted, so I overclocked the ever loving shit out of it, and had like compressed CO2 to like chill the processor to keep from cooking it. I mean, like, because that's what you had to do. I had a little air conditioner with the duct that like blew into my case because I was like
Wow, that's
overclocking.
hardcore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I still cooked it so many times. Like every time my brothers would upgrade, they'd be like, "Here, you can have a little graphics card." And I was like, "Okay, how much voltage can I put through this?" Like, I mean, that was my kind of thing. Nowadays, I don't even have a PC anymore that does that. But like, I have the PS5 because maybe the once a month when I want to sit down and play games, I play it.
Yeah.
I love the little Raspberry Pi. Kevin was instrumental in this. He's like, "Hey, why don't you just build an arcade cabinet?" Because I told him, I was like, "I really want to play some old games, but it's not fun playing on a controller. I want to sit there with the joystick and the buttons. You know, I want to play a video game,
Well, we just need to go to Cidercade.
right?" And I told him, I like going to Cidercade. He's like, "Oh, just build an arcade." I'm like, you can't build an arcade.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Bro, he sent me like one YouTube video and I went down the rabbit hole of engineering darkness. So I ended up looking on Facebook, finding an old 1-Up arcade that was bad, didn't work, didn't care. I just wanted the box. Took it, ripped out the screen, ripped out the guts, took one of these old computer monitors that I had, ripped off the frame, glued it into the back of the case, it's HDMI out, put it onto the little Raspberry Pi. There's a program called RetroPie. You download the app, you put it on the little SD card, and then you just download the ROMs. I have
Not that you would ever pirate video games for the sake of our
They're
listeners.
backup copies of content that I
you go.
have.
Exactly.
right? So on this,
So are all my DVDs.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And like you can go on eBay. So I'm not saying you can go, you don't have to download anything. You can go on eBay and just search for RetroPie SD card. And they sell them. It's like a 256 gigabyte card, already has RetroPie on it, and already has every video game ever made.
You have to have a Raspberry Pi
Yeah, and then all you do is when you get it in,
ever made before like a certain date, right? Not
so if you get the newest Pi 4, I think it's called the Pi 4 Plus, it'll play PS3 games on this little device. And here's where it gets fun. So you don't have to install anything. You get the little card, you just stick it in, and it boots to the SD card. So as soon as I turn on my arcade, it brings up this little Retro Pi logo, spins a little wheel, and then it loads, and you just scroll. And you can scroll by console, you can scroll by alphabetical order. I have every Atari game, every NES game, Sega, Super Nintendo, everything. NES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color. You can search by, like you go to Star Wars and there's like 75 Star Wars games. So whatever you want to play, you
TIE
just
Fighter. And
you just tap down on the little joystick and you hit the A button and it loads. And then on the front of my console, I put a USB port and I bought one of those little Joy-Con Xbox controllers, little like, just a generic whatever. I just plug it in. I can play everything I want. Now, I had to source the material. The monitor was free. I had a Raspberry Pi. I had to buy some little speakers. I bought a little thing. I guarantee you I didn't spend $200 for the whole thing. I played the crap out of it. I used to have it out here, and I put it in my kids' room because they were always out here playing it while I wanted to do something else. I need to move it back out here. It is my favorite console to play. Tetris, Donkey Kong, Star Wars, every Mario game, it'll play N64 games. It'll play anything you want.
it's so much easier than messing with all the different consoles and all.
And that's why I just wish that a company would come out with something like that. Nintendo, PlayStation, whatever. Make a simple console. Charge me $100. I know it wouldn't cost you that to mass produce something like
Atari
that.
Actually has them.
Atari has the retro
Yeah.
thing,
With
and my
every
case that's
game.
on my little Raspberry Pi, I got on Amazon. I got a case. It's a miniature NES Nintendo case, so it's like this big, and the HDMI port is like for the controller, but it has Wi-Fi. I'm telling you, it is the most fun I have ever had on a project, and it's 2 players because I had little 2 things. I've always wanted to build another one, and instead of using a little monitor, do like a 30-inch TV and just have it, because you can buy the light guns for it and you can play all the Time Crisis games and all of that stuff. The sky is the limit with it. You can have it with 4 players, so you can sit there and play like the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the old Simpsons game. Dude, we got to show it to you. Or I'll just bring
Yeah,
it
I've
out
never
here.
seen it.
I'm going to bring it out here and just plug it back in. When people come over, you'll enjoy it.
That sounds cool.
You said it's the most fun you've had on a project, and all I can think of is we haven't been able to legally distill yet. That's what
I really wanted to buy one of those little tabletop like 5-liter barrels and just dump in some Everclear and just kind of make my own.
We could do
to,
that.
to play around with, right?
We could do that.
Because but then I'm also like, oh, that's going to be kind of boring, right? Because all you're doing is dumping it in, just waiting. But we did do one at my bourbon group. We got one of those little barrels and we dumped in a bottle of, it wasn't expensive. It was the Benchmark Full Proof. So it's 125 proof whiskey. And we dumped a bottle in and we let it sit in the barrel, which the other thing is, a large barrel surface area, when you fill it up with 55 gallons, which is a standard whiskey barrels, 50, 55, 57, whatever it is, gallons. The surface area of the barrel only touches a very small amount of the whiskey. So that's why it has to stay in there for 2 years.
Right. That's why you use chips.
Right.
To greatly
If you
increase
go to
the-
one of those little small barrels, it ages much faster because there's less volume and there's more of the liquid touching the barrel at one time. So yeah, I thought about doing that. And then after I soaked it, I was like, oh, I could pour my whiskey in there. Cause I told you, or pour my meat in there. I told you I did that one boucher and then I fortified it with Woodford Reserve whiskey. Hands down my favorite bottle of meat I've ever made. I took the boucher, which
You
I
said
sti-
that about 2 or 3 different recipes that we talked about today.
No, that boucher is still my favorite because it was so easy. What's a Geico commercial? So easy a caveman could do it. If anybody wants to make a delicious, drinkable mead, that is the one. We need to make it, show people how easy that is, and then put a little bit of whatever your favorite bourbon is. For me, it was Woodford Reserve. I only put 2 ounces in a 750 milliliter bottle. So it wasn't a lot. It was just enough to get those like oaks and vanilla notes. And I'm telling you, that was like my favorite thing. So in a couple of weeks, when this gets legal, everybody can just come down to the shop and get everything they need for distilling.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking that when we do the
You have to change the name, not Craft Brew Shop.
It's still Craft Brewing. That's one of the things that I think the shop actually can bring to the table for people that are doing such recreational stuff is the knowledge as to how to ferment, because everything starts with that wash. It starts with the fermentation. So, it's like I was looking over here, you have a bottle of scotch, and I was thinking single malt scotch. That just means that they took one base grain,
Right.
and that's what they use to ferment.
That's the malt.
That's the malt.
Right.
So they went through and they let it steep at 150 degrees. Hold it as best as you can. Having those brewing appliances really help.
Break down those long chain starches into short chain.
Turn
So that
it into that
Yep.
sugary tea that you were talking about. And then you also mentioned amylase, and that's the protein that helps digest it. And believe it or not, when the seeds are germinating, they create their own natural amylase. So, yeah, that's you can always add an artificial amylase.
that we talked about that because amylase is one of the enzymes that's naturally found in saliva.
Yes.
And so I don't think I've ever told him this story about there is a beer recipe. Is it Peruvian?
Yeah, where they masticate
They
the corn.
take corn kernels, they put them in their mouth, and they chew them, but they don't swallow. They spit it in a cup.
Yeah.
And then when they're done, they take all of the spit corn, dump it in, and make beer out of it. And it's called
Hot Tua.
chicha. Yeah, it's a hot Tua beer. Hey, you know what'd be funny? We could totally make a batch of cheats. I think it's called chitza.
Yeah,
It is
pizza.
pizza.
Chitza. We could make a batch of chitza. We should do this for our next homebrew adventure.
I can't.
Let's do some chitza, okay?
can't.
And then we'll bottle it.
I'm gonna try it.
We will bottle it, and we're going to call it the Hak Tua beer.
Has a very thick consistency.
I'm telling you, they have used a little bit of everything in homebrewing to the part that it is just,
Well, I mean, clarifications. Swim bladders out of a fish.
yeah.
I mean, for clarifications, seaweed, the Irish moss.
Yeah. Is that really what it is? It's seaweed.
It's seaweed. Which I can only imagine a drunk Scot was behind this somehow.
Scots are incredible.
He probably wanted to sabotage another brewer's stuff, so he threw a batch of seaweed in there, and they brewed it anyway. It was at the end
And
of
it
the
came
brew.
out velvety smooth.
Clear as a bell,
That's
and
beautiful.
tasted great. And the guy's like,
Dang it.
thanks.
Yeah. So I think it was Skip one day that told me this story. He's like, if you look at a civilization's history and you go back and you can see peaks and you can see demises, and you look at like the Roman Empire, largest in the world, and they say Rome wasn't built in a day, but it fell in one, right? Like all of this peaks and everything. He's like, you look at the Irish civilization
Yeah.
and the path that they were on they should be, when they started to like develop working with metal tools, refinement of metals, mathematics, some of the things that their culture developed hundreds of years before the rest of Europe, they were on path to be the most technological civilization on Earth.
You're making it out to make it sound like
Ireland.
Atlantis over here.
Seriously, they were on path to become the most technologically advanced civilization on Earth.
Then they discovered alcohol.
This is
Then
a
they
bar joke. You know that.
This is a true story. They discovered distillation,
This is a
and
bar
for
joke.
400 years they didn't do a freaking thing.
Yeah.
And it's referred to as the Dark Ages of Ireland, also known as the Stout Age, as in dark beer. And I love that because for 400 years they didn't regress. They just put a pin in it, and the rest of the world caught up to them.
So the
Go ahead.
joke is that God made whiskey to stop the Irish from
Taking over the world. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I read something really interesting. You brought up Rome, and when would you guess the fall of the Roman Empire was?
Oh, I don't know.
Like 400 AD.
I would think
450.
I was going to say later. I was thinking like 800.
So the date that I was reading was actually late 1300s, early 1400s.
So
And the reason
time
for
of the
this-
Vikings.
Well, the reason for not with the Vikings.
Well, the Vikings were like
I can't remember who it was. I wasn't. It wasn't Germanics, but there was a tribe of barbarians that supposedly kind of pushed Rome to its knees.
right.
And the issue was, this was a time the Holy Rome was a Christian empire at this time.
Right. The Holy
And,
Roman Empire.
and this group, some historian will jump on here and correct me.
I hope
this
they do.
group
Yeah, I'm sure.
was mostly Islamic.
Okay.
And so the historians at the time didn't want a country being a Christian nation empire being portrayed as
Falling to
falling to an Islamic empire.
Okay.
So they pushed the fall of the Roman Empire back before this was a thing.
So it actually fell much later.
Well, I mean,
Interesting.
arguably you could say that the Ottoman Empire and
It was the Ottoman Empire, I think.
so they moved to Constantinople, and then we got that great song all
Right.
about Istanbul and Constantinople.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Fascinating.
It was the Ottomans. It was the Ottomans.
Which I do think it's funny that the civilizations that created beer, and then we think of like, okay, most people that are not historically minded would think when they think beer, as I did, I always thought of like friars. I always thought of like
Monks.
monks having made beer, but like that's where it started. No. I mean, like, I think, do they basically, I know there's some like, they kind of go back and forth. Basically, Samaria is
Yeah,
where we
or-
agree.
Or ancient Egypt.
Yeah,
it's
Egypt
old.
had- yeah.
It's old.
It's old.
So-
It's like the oldest beverage in the world.
Near as we can tell,
Oh, please.
somebody stored grain in clay pots, and the clay pots, and it was in a temperate, where it
As
got
the desert
hot.
often
Yeah.
is.
So it rained, and the pots were filled with water. And so what happened eventually is it went through several cycles of filling with water, but then draining out, drying, filling with water, draining out,
As
drying.
we would call sparging.
Yeah, well, and at some point, actually, it's the germination starts at that point, and then it got really hot, and it dried out and killed the grain.
That's
And then
fascinating.
they just sort of left it, and then it filled up with water again. And this time, when it filled up with water, it started bubbling. And then instead of somebody throwing out this bubbled, congealed mass, they daringly took a drink of it, and it got them absolutely hammered.
Well, they're probably like, oh, this smells amazing. What is this?
Well, because this was the thing, the workforce of the pyramids.
Yes.
We don't know, as we've talked about, we don't know how they were built, but they documented how those people were paid,
Yes, they did.
and they were paid in beer
Among
as
other
part,
things.
among other things. They were paid with beer. So like that's how they know. Like, well, it was around there, and then Samaria, they kind of like, well, they had their thing, and they did a lot of things with it too, because it wasn't what we would. It's not Bud Light, okay. What they made was they seasoned it with things like saffron.
But
and
it was a grain, a germinated grain, turned into a tea that was soaked in hot water to release its sugar. And that is
wild
the
yeast
basic-
just happened to
that
find
is
it.
the basic. For it probably was extremely sour.
Well, they think that the oldest actual like sources of fermentation ever is mead. That it is the original of all alcohol from Africa. So there was these bees that would hollow out large chunks of the tree, and then it would kill the tree. And so when the winds from the African storms would come through, it would snap the tree off where this honey hive was, and they basically made a bowl in the top of the tree that was too high for animals to get to. And when it would rain, this bowl that was filled with honey would fill with water and the natural yeast, and it would ferment.
And then some crazy asshole drank.
Well, so that they were talking about like they have like
Just
writings.
He was genius.
They had these writings like
Definitely was.
the monkeys would climb the trees and they would watch them drink this stuff. And most people don't know this. If you ever want to know if water is safe to drink, monkeys will not drink unsanitary water. That's like a thing. So
much useful here in North America.
it's very useful in North America. But back then in that
So if
part
you
of
see a
the world,
Sasquatch drinking out of a river, you can drink out of it safe.
if you saw a puddle of water on the ground, if the monkeys weren't drinking out of it, it's probably not safe to drink. African tribes knew that. Water was precious. They saw them drinking this stuff at the top, and of course they would drink it till they literally passed out and they'd fall out of the tree. These monkeys would be like laying unconscious around this tree. So they would climb up there and get the stuff. Well, then they started putting two and two together. They're like, hey, okay, well, we can see that this is a honey hive.
They're like, hey,
We can see that there was water in this, and not only is this, but this stuff stays good for a long time because this is long after the rains, but it's still safe to drink. That's really important. So they started making pots, collecting the honey. They were the first apiary civilization.
Yeah.
Collecting the honey, putting it in pots, and making it for the drought season so they had something to drink.
You'd think you'd pick up the drunk monkeys and go, hey, free monkey.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
I will say this, and I won't deny that there have been many things that we have discovered through the course of civilization that have been happy accidents. But I think we also
Bob Ross.
we also just assume people were stupid. Like I have no doubt that maybe that's how where mead came from, right? But also keep in mind Egypt's were alchemy, like we discussed before.
sure.
The alchemy is based off people experimenting with different things. You can't say that. You can't say like a monkey fell out of a tree in Africa, and suddenly it spread worldwide, right? People were experimenting with different things, and discovered alcohol independently all across the world.
I'm sorry, I completely forgot about
Yeah,
that.
we were supposed to switch out.
Yeah, we're supposed to switch out.
Well, it's
So,
okay. We can switch out now.
yeah, at least 2 shirts. I didn't know how many to bring. I figured
No,
I
that's
could
perfect.
each-
Yeah, it's great.
What size?
I am a 3XL.
You are a 3XL. Here's a 3X.
Perfect.
Large, I think. Long.
Ooh, nice.
XL.
You're an XL. Here's an XL.
Awesome. Look at
There
there.
you go.
Oh, let me fix this real quick.
So I figured I'd bring you a shirt so you could, rep the store. Yeah.
Yes, give me a moment. Hold on. While we are off camera,
Yeah. There you go.
I will happily rep the store. Oh, I like this.
It's got the
Soft.
number on the back.
Ooh.
So, there
Hold on,
you go.
wait. Before I put it on, let me show the back off.
There you go. There's the shop and there's
I
the
like
number.
that. The front on there.
And we're always willing to talk to people and give them advice. And honestly, would love it if people bought their supplies through us. It's always funny when people buy the equipment online, and keep in mind we sell the equipment as well. And often we'll work with you. Our prices are often very competitive because we have Amazon too.
If you take out the shipping, you
Yeah.
guys are on par with everyone. And on top of the fact that when I need something, I don't usually need it next week.
Yeah, you need it now.
I need it now. So for me, that's been a big thing. All right, let me show my
And the willingness
repping
that
my
we
pride
have,
Man,
here.
that's nice.
the willingness that we
nice.
have to come in, when we normally it would be closed, so
Yes.
people just make an appointment on the days that we're off. And that's just as easy as, I'm going into town the next 2 hours. Could you be in the shop? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Now, what are your hours at the shop?
Normally we are 11 to 6 on Wednesday through Friday, and
Okay.
Saturday we are 10 to 5. So
And closed on Sunday.
Sunday through Tuesday, but by appointment.
I like that. Well, let me show Justin over here repping his.
There you go.
I love it.
Dude, this is awesome.
Absolutely. So thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and we should do this again. I really like the idea of having a brew day.
Oh, yes.
It really would be quite fun if we had a distilling day, and
Hey,
hopefully
Hopefully that'll be legal
I was
soon.
gonna say,
Yeah.
once it becomes a thing,
yeah.
I definitely, not to steal the parlance, want to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a thing that people are legitimately going to be looking for information on.
Yeah.
Because there is some dangers to it.
Yes.
And we want to make sure people understand that. This is not something that we don't recommend you immediately jump into distilling.
Well,
you need some of the equipment and just understand basic brewing principles first.
Yeah. Jump into cider.
Yes.
Jump into cider now.
Yes.
And mead is probably the second easiest. Jump into mead now, but understand that mead has a natural preservative in it, so it's going to be the longest thing to ferment. So that's why I like ciders, is because they're easy, they're
fast.
quick.
Yeah. And then you can get into that. You can help them with sodas.
Yep.
Because you do soda kits as well.
Yes, we do.
Some people nowadays are really big especially the other thing. Say you want to get into home brewing, but you're sober.
Yeah.
Get into sodas. That's a fantastic thing that
the
you can
hop
enjoy.
water was a really
Hop
easy
water.
thing.
Seltzers are super popular now. So if you're like, oh, I don't really do beer or wine, and I don't care about whiskeys and stuff, you can get into hard ciders.
Yeah,
you
we
can get
roast
into
our own coffee, so we start with the green
that's-
beans, and we will sell green beans too. So if people want to, and that is when a coffee bean is unroasted, it's green actually,
Right.
and it's funny because it has this sort of I should bring some. It has this almost spicy nose to it, but when you roast it, all of those
caramel notes and everything come out.
All the other notes come.
and I've also been told that the less you roast it, the more caffeine it actually
It is,
has.
yes, but it also tends to be a little bit more bright or bitter. It has
Mm.
high acidity to it. A lot of the breakfast blends are like that because, of course, they're intended for morning.
More caffeine.
So more caffeine. Yeah.
Well, I know you drink about 7 cups a day.
I drink a stupid amount of coffee every day. Yeah.
So
sure.
next
Should
time I go,
probably make your own. Do you have a popcorn air popper? Okay.
I have one of those. The little on the counter, little
yeah,
red
you
thing.
can use that to roast.
Oh wow,
That's cool.
that is
Yeah.
cool.
See, that's the other thing I like. Like anybody else that has a shop would be like, "Oh, you need to come down here and you need to buy this fancy whatever else." He's like, "Hey, I'll sell you the beans, and I'll show you how to use the stuff you already have, and you can make your own coffee."
Yeah.
That's fast. So what? So they don't fly out. What, you just cap it and just let it sit there until it gets to the color you want?
No, you want to leave it open and let it breathe, and it's going to throw a bunch of chaff all over the place. So you probably want to
Do it
this
outside.
on a porch.
See, that's the other thing. He makes sure I don't get in trouble with the wife.
Yeah, and if you
But I bet that's a heavenly smell to fill the house with.
it does smell good.
My wife hates it when I do mead sometimes because
there's a
the
California Prop 65 on it, though. Unfortunately, believe it or not.
roasting coffee is known to cause cancer in California.
Exactly.
Oh my god!
Only in California, though.
Of course it is.
So
Well, thank God they have their paper straws. So
yeah,
Save the sea turtles.
they have a warning on it so that this is going to cause cancer when you go ahead and do it anyway.
Right, naturally.
So if you have a cast iron pan, we could do a cowboy coffee, and that's actually really.
I do have cast iron pan.
Yeah, that is actually quite fun and a brilliant tasting thing all on its own.
We should do that here too.
Oh no. Okay. The whole point of this podcast
Yeah.
is because we legitimately there is plenty of what we call average people that are fascinating to talk to. There are people that we hang out with all the time that have so much more depth that we don't even know about. And then there are rare people that are so specific down specific rabbit holes that they become experts on stuff.
Yeah.
We've had a couple people on that we can sit here and talk about random stuff with. And it's entertaining and it's fun and it's a neat talk. The other side of the podcast,
It is a neat talk, isn't it?
it is a neat conversation. The other side of it is to find some people that really connect with an audience, not every episode. It's to find someone that's going to be able to introduce them to something that I have never met a guy that wasn't interested in one of three things. He either loves World War II history, smoking meats, or making his own beer, home brewing in general. Like most men have done or thought about one of those three things. And then
You
it's
could just say war, barbecue, or beer.
yeah, I mean, literally, like people are just, I can tell you, I'm not a very good barbecue person because I don't have the patience and I've never really had the time, the education for it. Brewing is something I've always been interested in. My dad's never done it, so I can't say like, oh, I wanted to brew because my dad did. I asked my dad, I'm like, you ever brew beer? Because I was really hoping he'd be like, yeah. I'm like, I was like, you ever brew beer? He's like, never. I was like, why not? And he goes, when I grew up, beer was cheap. Got the little pearl beers and the little bottles, and they were cheap. They came with your burger. You bought a burger, you got a free beer. So he's like, well, nobody ever thought about it. And I was like, yeah. He's like, but you
You're
guys.
in Texas?
No, he's from Ohio.
Oh, okay.
So like up there, he's like, you bought a burger and it came with a free beer. Like that was just the thing. And at the time, I think there was probably a lot of people that just didn't understand the brewing process. And it does seem, well, if you buy a book, it looks like a lot. And if you get on the wrong YouTube video, they will make you scared of the process.
Or the wrong TikToks.
Or the wrong TikToks.
you don't. It
But if you
doesn't have to
find
be
someone,
complicated.
if you find someone like our Yoda here that will literally hold your, and we went down to the International Brew Day at Kevin's Brewery, which I should give him a shout out. It's at Bear Arms,
Bear like in
like Bear Your Arms. Yeah.
B-A-R-E.
B-A-R-E. I always get that wrong. It's in Waco, so it's not Baylor Bears. It's Bear Your Arms, like roll up your sleeves, Arm Brewing Co. And when we first were going there, he didn't own it. He was one of the homebrewer guys.
Yeah.
And we would come and we would share our beers and try other people's beers and learn new tactics and we'd pick something as a group. And of course, where it was in Waco, I didn't get down there very often, but the Facebook group and keeping up with people and everything else. And then he ended up buying the whole brewery.
Yeah.
And now he is a professional brewer. And once a year, he hosts on International Homebrewers Day, which is May the 4th, also Star Wars Day.
Nice.
this year. It was.
Yeah, it was
the
on
first weekend in
Yeah.
May.
So we went down to Bear Arms a couple years ago and brewed a beer in a professional brewery, which was great because he had some cool technology that we didn't have, which was like measuring the total dissolved solids in the water, which was the big thing we talked about, is having the right water chemistry is really important. And adding things like, I mean, it's scary from a professional level when you have a pot of water that you're about to make beer in, and he comes over with a bucket that on the side has the corrosive death's head symbol and says acid, and he's measuring out acid
That's just a little lactic acid.
but it looks scary. That's what I'm getting at. And if you get on the wrong YouTube video, someone's gonna be like, you gotta be careful with blah, blah, blah. And yes, it's corrosive. You have to use rubber gloves and stuff when you're pouring it in.
You have to be careful when pouring gas.
Exactly. Exactly.
You should be specially trained before dispensing gasoline at any pump.
If you know nothing about brewing, but you have even an inkling of an interest, get on Facebook, search for your county, search for your city, search for whatever, find a home brewers group and show up. You don't need to bring anything.
Yeah. They're often very happy to just have members.
And on top of it, I have equipment, you have equipment. I can't tell you how many times I've gone and be like, oh, I'm getting started. And we'll be, oh, hey, don't buy anything. Here, I've got an extra of this. And, oh, hey, I don't even use this anymore. I use a different thing now. So, oh, when you're ready to bottle, just call me. I'll come over. We'll bring my capper or whatever. Because, like, the capper I have, terrible. If I ever need to cap something, I'm calling him. Because we went over to that friend's house and we didn't break a single bottle capping them. I probably break about 10% of the bottles I try to cap.
Wow.
It's just one of those things. I've had terrible luck with it. It's why I stopped bottling. That's why I got into kegging. But there's so many things like that. Just show
why
up.
I got into kegging.
Why?
I mean, this is another diversion.
You have
You're
like
trying to
10
wrap
kegs
up.
going. Oh,
Yeah, because you fill one container or you fill 60 containers. Your choice.
well, and every single time you touch something, you run the risk of contaminating.
Well, I always use like those kind of bottles with the pop tops.
Yeah.
For my beers and stuff.
Those take about 4 normal bottles. So instead of filling one container, you're filling 20.
yeah.
Well, we used to go to Aldi and they'd have
Yeah,
like,
the
their
lemonade?
pumpkin spice and
That's
all
what
that
those
stuff.
are.
Is it the lemonade? Yeah.
Those are the lemonade ones that I get at Aldi's
Yeah.
for, I think they're $1.19. And I let the kids drink the lemonade, and then I soak it in water, peel the labels off, and I'm like, swing top bottle for a buck.
There you go. Exactly.
I'm like, basically, I get the lemonade for free.
Yeah, those are $5 bottles.
Yeah.
I don't know how they get them cheaper at Aldi's, but. And then when the little rubber stoppers go out, I go down to the craft brew shop.
Got the grommets.
And I'm like, hey, I need some of those little rubber red thingies. He's like, I got you. In fact, I guarantee you, up there in one of those baskets at the top, there's one of those baskets up there has a whole bunch of it. There's my French oak chips
Yeah, I see.
that I got forever ago that I haven't done anything with yet.
Well,
So-
we could totally fix that if you
So
know.
you're saying we could get some Everclear?
Yes.
Get those French oak chips.
Yes.
Yep.
Soak them for 24 hours.
24 to 48.
And you would have,
Honestly, as little as 12.
what would that make?
Whiskey.
Whiskey.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So I guess the alcohol concentration goes down because the wood absorbs a lot of the alcohol? Or?
No, you proof it down with distilled water.
Oh, okay.
So-
Before
so-
or after you soak it?
After.
After.
So
Wow.
the term proof came from once you got done making a spirit, you dumped it onto gunpowder and you lit it with a match. If it was too watery, the gunpowder wouldn't light.
Yeah.
There was no proof
Yeah.
that you made good alcohol.
The
And then
tolerance
at
is
the
about
color of the flame,
130.
yeah, and then the color of the flame told you, or how quickly it burned. They had like a whole little formula for it. Because if I remember correctly, the flash point of spirit, distilled spirit, it's 90 proof.
I want to say it's 130 to 135.
Is that
somewhere in
okay?
there.
It's higher.
So the thing is see if you get to that flash point and then you measure out how much fluid that is, and then
Right.
take and measure out exactly that same amount of
You can
water,
cut it in half.
and then cut it in half. You've actually put it to 70.
Right.
So you're 67.
Yeah. I mean,
And
so if you have
so
100
that's
proof
what
alcohol
everyone-
and you want to make it 80 proof, you add 20% volume.
Here's the easy.
It's simple
formula.
math.
you take one volume of Everclear,
Mm-hmm.
2 of the same bottles in water. That'll put you at like 65 proof.
So is what we're talking about the illegal part, or is it actually
That's actually
processed?
legal.
So it's legal.
That's completely legal as long as you go to a liquor store and buy you a handle of Everclear.
Let me put it this way: I can go and buy a legally distilled product and condition it and proof it however I want. I can.
You could buy a single
there's
malt that's
something called-
130 proof and say, hey, I want to cut it down to 90.
Yeah, there's something called tinctures,
Yeah.
where you can actually take certain flowers and medicinals and whatnot, and you can actually soak them in Everclear, and there's all sorts of different
Sore throat remedies from about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Put
it's
ginger and
wonderful-
honey and lemon and all of that good stuff to
wonderful
it.
Snake oil stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of it, though.
Yeah, some of it could get you a little.
Some of it will work.
inebriated. Yeah.
Well, it's like when you go get bitters that you add to a cocktail.
Yeah.
I always find this hysterical. You don't have to be 21 to buy a bottle of bitters. But on the bottle, it says it's 40% alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I've never understood that.
Well, because it's so repulsive to drink
yeah.
straight. So
So bitter.
One thing you were talking about, I want to tell this little story and then we can wrap up because I know everybody's got plans.
yeah, I've got to go to bed actually.
I don't blame you. I don't blame
Got
you.
to be up in 8.5
The
hours.
argument that the government's currently making about for safe and health. Have you ever heard of I believe it was called Black Sunday. You ever heard this story?
A riot. That,
No. Okay. So,
Or Black Friday.
okay. So as we all
That
know,
was a riot.
Yeah, it always is.
yeah. So, as most people know, all alcohol was rendered illegal under the 14th Amendment. No, God, I always get this wrong. Anyways,
That has to do with slavery.
that was slavery. Excuse me. Because the 21st Amendment gave us the right back
Yeah.
to drink. Anyways, prohibition. No alcohol could be drank, right? At that time, obviously, we had a lot of like gangsters and mobsters and speakeasies and all that kind of stuff. Now, what people don't understand is that during Prohibition, it was not illegal to drink; it was illegal to produce. So, for a lot of people, before Prohibition went into effect, they bought cases of champagne. Bars, they were stocked for like elite clubs. Business people could still drink legally. There were bars that served alcohol during Prohibition. It was just very expensive because they had to prove with bills of sale that this was purchased pre-Prohibition, which is where we get the term things like pre-Prohibition lager and stuff. Now, speakeasies were open because the common man couldn't afford to buy a truckload of champagne to keep at his chateau to drink for a couple of years. So in New York City, this got to be a real problem one of the, I think it was the mayor of New York, distilleries, in a process to try to keep themselves alive, started making denatured alcohol during Prohibition. And all denatured is they take natural alcohol and they added a toxifier
Well, it's usually gasoline.
to make it, it wasn't just unpalatable, it would kill you.
Yeah.
But apparently, a bunch of mobsters with their scientific big brains figured out how to renature alcohol. So they made alcohol, they distilled it, they added a thing to make it toxic. This group of people said, hey, if we do this step-by-step process, it makes it back into a drinkable spirit, and then they were producing it.
Frankly, I think you just redistill it.
Yeah, I forget the whole process, but this is a great story. Go look this up later. You're going to be like, I cannot believe that this happened. This is something they don't teach you about in
Probably
school.
did just redistill it and separated it that way.
Yeah, and then just
You
run
can
it
just-
through a little bit of charcoal, and they'll take out.
So what they did is overnight, the New York City Police Department showed up to these distillers, and they didn't tell them why, but under like gunpoint, they doubled the amount of the toxifying agent and didn't tell anybody. So all of these extremely toxic denatured alcohol went out. People did the same old step-by-step process to take out the toxic agent. They didn't take it all out. And for the period of about, it was one weekend, but I think it was called Bloody Sunday. I mean, it was like thousands of people died in New York City because the government intentionally poisoned the alcohol supply.
Wait,
and
they made it
didn't-
illegal because it was dangerous for you to drink. So they
Exactly.
toxified it to
Yeah,
kill off
I'm
the
telling
people.
you, it's not like, oh, a couple hundred people got sick. Every hospital in New York, they had all these people, irreparable liver damage. They like, I think it was like 17 or 1800 people
Wow.
died.
Well, it's a
in
good
this
thing they saved
weekend.
all those people
Your,
with those
your
laws.
government at work.
Yeah.
If the government says you don't need to brew your own alcohol,
I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
8 scariest words in the world, or 9, whatever it is. Yeah. So, anyways, I'll leave you with that. But that's one of my favorite little like caveats. And another thing is do you know how they repealed drinking before? Because they repealed the prohibition. Everybody could go drink. I actually have a picture. I'll show you before you leave. It's on my wall. It's a picture at a bar in New York City the day prohibition was lifted, and everybody's holding up a beer. Do you know how because they had to go through the whole constitutional process to ratify the 21st Amendment. So that took time. But they were like, hey, we're going to let everybody drink. Do you know how they finally let everybody drink until the 21st Amendment was passed?
How?
When they instilled prohibition, they never defined what alcohol was.
Yeah.
So they said, hey, we're just going to come in until prohibition's lifted. We're going to say anything below 3.2% isn't considered alcohol.
Hence 3-2 beer.
And that is why, to this day, all American beers that aren't craft brewed are 3.2%. Because that's what they all started making 3.2% beer, and they referred to it as near beer. I think it's one of my
So
favorite stories, and that's
there
why
is-
there were states that just until the last 5-10 years.
There is a defining thing because a lot of people refer to moonshine. Just to make sure that people are clear as to what moonshine is, it's any illegally made alcohol.
Yes, any
So-
illegally distilled
Yeah.
alcohol, because you can make wine, but even wine, if you make wine above, is it 20%?
If you make it above, I want to say wine can go as high as 24%.
It's something like
if I
that,
remember
yeah.
Correctly. But
Then it
we
becomes a
talked
spirit.
We talked about cold distilling.
Right.
So you freeze it, you're concentrating it. The second you try and go through any type of concentrational,
You have
step,
distilled.
You have technically distilled, and you have broke the law.
And most people will argue this, and they'll be like, oh, distillation's legal in my state. That just means your state isn't enforcing it.
Yeah.
Federally, it is illegal in all 50 states. And if they want to show up, it's a bad day.
Yeah.
But hopefully, very luckily, everybody will enjoy what Texas is going to give you, which is
Well, and I want to say that that would show up most likely would be a state or a county,
Yeah.
deputy. There wouldn't be
Right.
the feds aren't going to kick down your door because you might have a gallon of illegally made shine. I mean, they don't like it when you're selling it And then that really is a taxation issue, and that really is circumventing.
If you open a
great deal
food
of
truck
law.
without the right permits, you are going to go to jail.
Yes, yeah.
I mean,
You're
that's
in
just
a
the
lot
way
of
it
trouble.
is. But if you want to cook food for Thanksgiving, everybody can come over.
Right.
And that's what I think what Texas is trying to do. Hey, if you want to sell your distilled spirit, we have a law for that. Texas is just saying, hey, if you're brewing it on your own private property, distilling it on your own private property for your own private use, it's not taxable.
I do want to clarify. It's not necessarily Texas that's saying that.
The
That's what
Texas judge
the federal judge
in Texas. Yeah,
happened
true.
to hear the case in Texas.
Thanks to the lovely Texas Home Distillers Association.
Thanks to the
we do
the
need to tag their
hobby,
Facebook page in this too.
Yeah, I've got the name of that organization. I think it's
Because
the,
I'm going to go like them and follow them on Facebook.
Yeah, it's the Hobby Distillers Association. Keller.
Make sure we tag them in that
I think that
because
they're-
and same
they're
thing. We need to send this video to them and be like, hey guys, we're behind you. Like,
Yeah.
this is awesome. This is really cool. Good for y'all. But
That'd be
well,
awesome.
I hope you had fun.
Oh, I had a blast. Well, I really do look forward to
Good.
having a
We need to wait for some good
fermentation
weather because I know once I open this up, it gets a little warm.
day. Yeah, maybe into September and October.
Yeah. Just in time to brew us a nice Martzen.
Yeah, and we can talk about all the other wonderful things in Texas that occur at that point because we didn't get any chance to talk about all the Ren Fair circuits and all that other stuff that I'm
Oh, yeah.
involved with on the
That'd be
side.
fun.
And I think if people can just, I don't know, not everyone wears kilts. I'm just saying, you know. But if you do, you might be interested in this.
And we also wanted you to take one of our stickers with you.
Oh yes.
So that's one of our new stickers. You were the first recipient.
Oh, nice.
We just got those in, and do you think we should get some more?
Yeah, absolutely. But
Awesome.
it is. Yeah, I can see
It's
a
a
bit
little
of a
little beard squatch on there.
resemblance.
Yeah.
So,
But definitely, the only thing we ask is that when this episode comes out, please share it. We want to make sure that the people that know you see you, and then the people that don't know you find you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So share it. Make sure you ask all your friends to share it, and we'll try to do the same thing. Anything that we can send your way, I promise we will. I mean, I know in the past you have gotten some business off of the TikTok side.
Yes.
That makes me so happy that some people have reached out to you because he called me one day. I didn't tell him that I like propped him up on my TikTok, and we were talking. He goes, "Okay, that explains it." I said, "What explains?" He goes, "Man, just out of nowhere, we were getting phone calls from like all over the United States, like these people, like."
people are like, I'm having problems with my mead, and it's like, well, can you come in? And it's like, no, I'm in Vermont.
Yeah. He's like, "I'm glad you told me." But,
Yeah, okay.
but it's
Surprise.
But you know what's funny? You know what's funny? That just means that there's not enough people like you in your shop out in the United States.
Unfortunately,
There's no, and I have been to a lot of homebrew shops. They pale in significant by comparison.
Thank you.
I mean, you can always find something with a bigger selection. What you can't find is somebody that's going to be helpful and it's going to actually make you a better brewer. I have learned so much from you that, guys, if you like any of my TikTok videos, probably 90% of that content is stuff that he's either showed me or taught me or helped me figure out on my own.
like anything, people make the difference.
I'll take a warm beer with the right person.
I've given you a warm beer before.
It was still good. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And even if you're not going to buy anything, go look them up on Facebook. They have a Craft Brew Shop Facebook page. Check them out on their website. If you have any brewing questions, please reach out to them. And if you don't have any brewing questions, call them up and tell them what you saw on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And they'll help you out any way they can. Go get a soda. If you don't drink, just go get a soda.
Blow up his phones anyway. Just give him a call.
Call his dad. He'll be there. I promise. I promise. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.